The Kage Civil War Number 2. 8. Look. My Mangekyo power is absolutely busted. I'm not actually sure why I'm writing this down. It's gonna cause some serious issues if anyone actually reads it, and I may just burn this when I'm finished, but I need to get my thoughts in order. 'Cause frankly, I'm scared of what it lets me do. I call it Koto Amatsukami. That's, a religious thing. Apparently Itachi's actually taken after me when it comes to that naming schema, which is kinda funny. But, yeah. It lets me mind control people. Okay, that's an oversimplification. But basically it turns my target's brain into an all-you-can-abuse buffet. Koto Amatsukami never actually forces the target to do anything against their own will, its only affects concern with memory. It rewrites it completely, changing memories, hiding them, adding new ones. And by reframing the context of the present, it can cause a person to act completely differently. They might believe that they were actually always working with a different side, that they've always hated or loved a certain someone. Hell, it can completely rewrite all their experiences since birth if you're thorough enough. The obvious downside is that if what you've made them remember conflicts with the reality they perceive, they'll get confused and may begin to suspect. You can't just brainwash the Hokage into believing they've always been your servant, obviously, because if they start acting differently then their teammates or friends might notice and try to take them down. And if their new memories don't make them like you enough, they could quite possibly betray you of their own will and there'd be nothing you can do about it. But even that can be overcome with a sufficiently skillful use. Organizing their thoughts so that they'll think other people around them are lying to them or misinformed. Making the target think that they're part of some elaborate deceptive scheme. That sort of tricky nonsense. If you have a long enough period of eye contact while you're applying the jutsu, you can even set it up so that different stimuli trigger different memories appearing or disappearing. You can even completely invalidate other Jinjutsu or Fuinjutsu that are giving the target commands, with a memory as simple as making them think that attack the leaf ninja actually means do the exact opposite thing. The technique is almost impossible to dismantle from the outside, at least not without permanently brain damaging the afflicted, but the target themselves can remove the jutsu with only a little more effort than a standard dispel casting, if they're a sensory type or become aware of it in some other way. This would be a weakness, except that the caster has a whole host of ways to make the target not want to do that. Simply making them think people are lying to them about them being affected, or more insidiously, that they chose to be affected by the Jinjutsu of their own free will for some other reason. Again, the only limits here are the imagination of the caster and how long they have to cast it. A brief moment of eye contact in the middle of combat will net you a total memory overwrite, but you won't be able to set up much for the future. But if you're sat in front of them for a few minutes to an hour, then there's practically no limit to what you can do to a person. Or spend a long time in advance preparing a general command to be aimed at anyone like, I don't know, a super complicated set of if X then Y commands to make them protect Konoha at all costs. The only weaknesses that I know of are twofold. 1. Its monstrously high chakra cost. I used this once, and I was out of action for days. And 2. Its ridiculous cooldown time. If I hit someone with the Koto Amatsukami now, I wouldn't be able to use it again for another 9-10 years. That's actually a bit of a relief, to be honest. If someone could use Koto Amatsukami every week, hell, every 6 months, well, it's quite possible they could have taken over the whole ninja world without us ever knowing about it. Hidden page in Shursui Uchiha's private notebook. Sewn into the lining of Itachi Uchiha's forehead protector. Hinata Hyuuga had been born a lonely girl. Pressured by her parents, ignored by her cousins, she had grown up with few friends and fewer confidants. Then had come the Hyuuga massacre. When everything in her world had changed. It was in the aftermath of that horrific experience that she had met Shimura Danzo. He had given her someone she could trust. He had given her purpose. He had been her only real anchor in the world when she had felt so lost and afraid, even when everyone else in the world had seemed cruel and stupid and ignorant. She had loved him like a father. Of course, the world hadn't known. She had been assigned to Team 7 alongside Naruto and Sasuke, all by design of course. Her mission had been to assess the progress of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, to ensure he would remain in control, as well as the youngest Uchiha heir and his progress. above all else, her duty had been to grow stronger. Strong enough to confront Neji Hyuuga, the man who had disobeyed his orders and his village, and to hunt him down and kill him. For justice, and for her own revenge. To that end, she had joined and spied on Orochimaru, and then killed him when he was no longer of use. She had torn through Deidara, and eventually, she had brought Neji down. And now she was at the culmination of all her master's planning. Where all the villages would be brought together under Konoha's control, and all the agents who opposed him would be snuffed out all at once. Master. I take it you want him dead? She asked, not taking her eyes off her teammate. She noticed with some small annoyance that she still considered Naruto her teammate. Did it not work? No, of course it worked. Any weakness is mine alone. Not dead. Danzo corrected her. The nine tails running rampant would be the last thing we need right now. Suppress him. Naruto looked between them, confusion plain on his face. Hinata, is this some plan I'm supposed to be in on? Of course, master. She replied, and began walking forwards. Oh, fuck knuckles. Naruto grimaced. Hinata? Wrong target? No, I'm good. She kept walking. Hinata, that's his face lit up. Hinata. You're under a genjutsu. You can tell I'm telling the truth, right? Check, you can just get rid of it with your Hirageko thingy. He definitely was telling the truth, and she saw it. She smiled at him. I know. Would she punched him in the stomach. He went flying backwards, landing on his feet several meters backwards. Then he narrowed his eyes, and stood straight, spreading his arms to either side. Really? She narrowed her eyes at him. That's your game? She didn't stop walking towards him. Fight back, Naruto, I will 64 palms you while you're stood there. Hey, Ice Stealer. Naruto called over her shoulder. If I kill you, that'll make the genjutsu turn off, right? No. Danzo said, not changing expression. Naruto turned back to Hinata. Is he lying? No. She replied, even though he was. He looked at her expression for a moment, then grinned. He totally is, isn't he? I've known you long enough to tell when you're badly lying. Hinata bared her teeth. She cleared the last 2 meters between them at top speed and readied herself in front of him. Still, he didn't move from his pose, so she let her attack fly, the 8 trigram 64 palms peppering most of the chakra points in his body. He collapsed backwards to the floor. Did you really think I wouldn't be able to bring myself to do that? Were you planning for me to dramatically stop just before hitting you? She asked, looking down at him. She'd left his head mostly intact, so he could reply. What? Naruto snorted. Nah. I was just buying time so I could gather sage chakra. Oh shit, there was a flash, and that ridiculous orange eyeliner appeared, and then Naruto booted her in the chest so hard she flew all the way across the bridge. Ungrateful little bastard. Mei shouted at Haku, firing another blast of lava style at the table he was hiding behind. He took a second to conclude that, yeah, those were all technically true points to make, before standing up and kicking the table towards her. A little hypocritical, don't you think? He shot back, summoning a pair of ice clones and charging forwards with them. Seriously, don't you have enough combination nature transformations? He fired a hailstorm of ice Senbon, but Mei conjured up a wall of vapor-style vapor, I guess? The Senbon melted the moment they entered it. Buffeting wind! Haku shouted, taking a page out of Naruto's book, but even though the vapor washed over Mei, it had no visible effect on her. A resistance then, since he'd seen her melt someone alive with that once. Water and fire. Boil release. It's nasty stuff. Coming right back at him was another globule of lava, which was only heated further by the wind he was launching at her, fucking elemental super effects, and he quickly manifested an ice mirror in front of himself. The lava shook the mirror, hard, but it wasn't enough to melt it. Good to know. That means his 2 ice clones jumped in at Mei from above on either side, both putting one hand up and shouting demonic ice vapor dragon. Mei countered. The discolored mist around her formed itself into a large, dragon, sweeping around and above her and catching both Haku clones in its jaws. Both were carried into a wall and shattered. Two timing little git. Mei snarled, putting her hands up and reapplying the cloud of vapors surrounding her. Is this why you accepted my invitation in the first place? To join Mist and overthrow me? Haku shrugged, grinning. Yeah, basically. The vapor melts me if I'm in it. She can make it into a deadly attack jutsu if it's up. She can't melt through my ice mirrors, so if I can catch her in the prison she's dead, but to do that I have to get close. This is gonna be interesting. I'm going to flay you. Mei snarled. Lava bullet. Ice spear. Fuck this matchup. Sasuke shouted out loud, catching a punch from the rakeage on Reido's blade and sliding backwards, then jumping upwards as a fucking laser beam from the Tsuchikage nearly tore him apart, and then he was lucky Gaara's sand came in to pull him away from Mei's follow-up flying knee. Hey, what people would be the worst opponents for Gaara? Well, someone fast enough to get through his sand walls, or someone whose ability could blast through them like they weren't even there. Oh, would you look at that? Hey, what people would be the worst opponents for Sasuke? Well, someone fast enough to dodge his hack's abilities, or someone who could fly almost entirely out of range of his melee attacks. Oh, would you look at that? We need to re-strategize. Gaara told him. The Kazekage was short of breath. This was likely the most running around he'd done in a while. Yeah, you think? Sasuke shot back. Get us some cover. He shot a fireball at Inoki to distract him, and Gaara pulled up a dome of sand around them. There was a thud, as one of the Kazekage's fists crashed into it. I'll hold off Captain Falcon, Sasuke instructed. You try to keep Santa Claus moving with your sand. That status quo is bad for us. Gaara reminded him. I know, but if you keep standing still, then they'll move to change it. When I say switch, be ready to focus on bogging down alright. I trust you. Mark? Sink. 8. Open us up. The sand shield exploded outwards, just in time for the rakeage to come charging in. The attack had been meant to hit the sand wall, and when his preferred target vanished from in front of him, it was left off balance, giving Sasuke time to summon a sword from his bracer and swing it. Shibuki's explosive tags weren't able to pierce the rakeage's lightning chakra mode cloak, but it sure sent him flying across the room. Sasuke didn't waste any time sprinting straight for him, sheathing Shibuki and drawing Reido, the sword's two halves paired together. Oh. You're approaching me? The rakeage taunted. Instead of running away, you're coming right to me? I can't beat the shit out of you without getting closer. Sasuke told him, grinning. Oh ho. Then come as close as you like. A wound up and punched. Chidori. Sasuke replied, channeling electricity through one blade and stabbing. Fist met sword in a collision of purple energy, sending a shockwave out around them, but it didn't hesitate to launch the next attack, and the next, forcing Sasuke to dodge, duck, and swing his blades like his life depended on it. Because it literally did. One punch would take his head off. He was slower than the rakeage, but his hand speed was almost comparable. And the Sharingan was busted, meaning his boosted reaction time let him keep up. And most importantly, why aren't your swords breaking? I growled at him, annoyed. Reido is imbued with lightning chakra. Sasuke smirked at him. It can eat up your attacks like they're breakfast. How does that work? Fuck if I know. The rakeage scowled and punched harder. Around them, the hall was gradually falling apart. Inoki was flying around like a mosquito, being pursued by tendrils of sand from all directions, trying desperately to snatch him out of the air. It wasn't working. He was fast in the air, and since Gaara had imbued wind chakra into the sand to make it lighter, it was easier to punch out of. After a while, Inoki seemed to think he got the hang of the sand's movement, spinning through a particularly tight gap and coming to a stop in the air, pointing both arms at Gaara. Particle style. He shouted. Special beam cannon. Sasuke saw it in his peripheral vision and narrowed his eyes. Switch. Sasuke, showing an incredible amount of trust in his teammate, disengaged entirely and turned his back to a rampant Kage. Gaara, showing an incredible amount of trust in his teammate, left himself completely open to Inoki's death laser and focused fully on A. The Raikage charged for Sasuke's back, but found himself grappled from all sides by sand, and by the time he could free himself of it, the Uchiha was already out of reach, leaping up to Inoki with lightning trailing from his fist. He didn't want to kill important international figures, hence no Raisin Kunai, but he had no problem with stunning them so bad they fell out of the sky. The aforementioned Tsuchikage saw Sasuke approaching, and his eyes widened. He aborted whatever jutsu he'd been charging at Gaara, instead reaching one arm out past Sasuke. Particle style, lightweight boulder jutsu. There was a flash. The Sharingan was the only reason Sasuke reacted fast enough, and his paranoia in immediately resorting to the Susanoo was the only reason he survived. One moment the Raikage was on the floor, the next he was driving an elbow into Sasuke's back, the purple ribcage forming around him cracking under the assault but barely slowing the strike down enough to render it non-crippling. Sasuke was thrown forward so hard he bounced off a wall, and Gaara had to catch him in a pillow of sand to stop him crashing into the floor full force. Instead, he merely collapsed to his knees, groaning. Ooh, what in the six paths of bullshit was that? The Tsuchikage's particle style lets him decrease the mass of an object or ninja without affecting their chakra or muscle power. Gaara told him, reaching down with a hand and pulling him to his feet. It allows him to increase someone's speed by incredible amounts, or decrease the momentum behind an incoming attack. And he also gets lasers that disintegrate everything? Sasuke stood up and pointed at the Tsuchikage. I know this is kinda rich coming from me, but your powers are bullshit. Noted. Inoki chuckled, hovering above the floor next to a Raikage who was literally glowing white and purple all at once. Well then, would you like to go for round 2? Hurry up, Naruto. Hinata. Sasuke muttered to himself, reaching up with one hand to clean off the blood dripping from his eyes. If this goes on any longer, I might not be coming out of it with 2 working eyes. Hinata flew back, going over Danzo's head, and watched with the Byakugan as Naruto completely ignored her, getting to his feet and charging for her master. His chakra points are completely blocked up, but it doesn't matter, he's running entirely on Senjutsu. I can't even see it, never mind interfere with it. Smart. Kesho Taketsu. Crystals erupted around Naruto, trapping him in place, and though he was able to tear his way out of them in a brief moment, it was enough time for Hinata to land and charge back in towards him, throwing a palm strike at his forehead. He blocked it. It's really nice to be able to actually do that, you know? Block you? He sighed, dreamily. She glared. Lion fists. Her next punch sent him sliding back a few steps, and she followed it up with a vacuum palm that he kicked up a block of stone to intercept, and then she was leaping in through the rubble with a flurry of rapid-fire punches that he set about countering. So how does this thing work, huh? He shouted at her, mid-combination. False memories? Subtle control? You wouldn't be acting like this if he'd completely taken you over, so what's the deal? The deal, she shot back, is that I've been working for him for years. When? He pointed out. You were our teammate for 6 months? It's called being a spy. I was reporting to him the whole time. Again, when? You spent all your free time watching me. Do you want me to draw you a fucking timetable, or can I get back to beating you senseless? Naruto wasn't lying. She had spent a lot of time watching him. What did he think Danzo's Koto Amatsukami had been about? And annoyingly, she wasn't beating him senseless. He flipped himself upside down and went for a spinning double kick that almost knocked her off the bridge, then landed on his hands, facing away from her, and continued to try and kick the crap out of her, blocking all her attacks perfectly without even being able to see. It's the sage mode. He's got a better sense of his surroundings than me. And he's faster than me. Oh, that's just plain not fair. He can't have made you forget what you did with us. Naruto shouted. Not when he knows you know I'm being honest about every memory I describe. And that means he pushed himself off of his hands, both feet kicking her backwards as he moved into a midair spin, energy gathering in his hands. That there's no way you don't still care. Senjutsu, Raisin Shuriken. The spinning white sphere, blades of chakra making a hideous mechanical whining noise, came barreling through the air towards her. She put her hands out. Here and now, she couldn't disrupt it. It wasn't normal chakra, substai, and her eyes widened as she realized that Danzo was directly behind her. Chakra exhausted, too, after using his technique. She couldn't dodge, or her master would die. Heavenly spin! She eventually decided, and the dome of chakra blossomed around her, but the Raisin Shuriken was taking no prisoners. Sparks of chakra flew as it tore into her defense, forcing her entire dome to either slide backwards rapidly or be penetrated entirely. That's why you're so angry, Naruto shouted, pointing an accusing finger at her. Because you're hurting. Because you're trying not to think about what he's asking you to do. Remember the night we got back from Wave? Remember the night you left? Look me in the eyes and tell me you remember those times, and you're still going to betray me. Shut up! She screamed. She cut her jutsu, letting the Raisin Shuriken fly freely towards her. This better work. Crystal release. Heavenly spin. The dome that span out from her then wasn't the light blue chakra that she usually employed. Instead, at the price of the numbness of the Gokiai spreading further up her legs and arms, her defense was constructed of millions of tiny crystal shards, overlapping, growing, and spinning around her. The Raisin Shuriken smashed into it, and it held, the two techniques spinning against each other like look, it was like Beyblades, alright, it was a freaking Kage-level Beyblade battle. The Raisin Shuriken began to lose momentum. Naruto tched, and slapped his hands to the ground. Sage art, swamp of the underworld. The surface of the bridge rippled, and Danzo was quick to jump backwards as a large zone in front of Naruto began to sink. The entire structure sagged as Hinata's dome span itself down into a muddy, swampy mess. Hinata cut the technique, but it was too late. By the time she dropped the wall of crystal around her, she was already submerged deep into the muck, and it flowed in to bury her almost to the head. Naruto sprinted across the surface of the mud with ease, passing her in a flash. Lucky for you, I don't plan on making you suffer anymore. He shot at her, before building up a base Rasengan in his palm and rocketing towards Danzo. No. No, no, you stay away from him. White rippled across her body. Naruto was less than a foot from Danzo's face before Hinata appeared behind him, ivory feet gripping perfectly to the swamp beneath her, and hooked one arm around his and threw him back the other way. He slammed down into the swamp he'd created, sinking halfway into the muck. You're right. Hinata admitted, meeting his eyes. Of course I care about you. How could I not? Nothing you remember is untrue. Every moment we were together I was there, I saw it, I felt it. I told you I loved you, and I meant it. And it's made me weaker. She pointed to her own forehead, where her Byakugan highlighted the foreign chakra pulsing through her mind. I know the Jinjutsu is there. Because I asked for it. I warned Master Danzo that I might not have the strength to hurt my team. And he told me to join up with you, go through with your plan, and wait. Naruto pulled himself out of the swamp and looked at her warily, as she continued. Cracks split through her arms, and with a yank, each limb split into two. In full General Grievous style, each of the 4 arms moved independently, and readied into stance. That's what this Koto Amatsukami is. It's my final gift from him. He put it there so that I can bring myself to destroy you. Let me go. No. Stay down, Kudos. I have to go. I have to save her. Kudos strained and strained, as Forsooth and a handful of other owls all piled on top of him to keep him in place. Kudos, please. Forsooth begged, forcibly holding his wing closed. You are in no condition to go anywhere. It's that Neji did something to you. Please stay still while we bring in your grandmother and Ao. Kudos wailed, crying. I have to save her. Please, believe me, Mistress Hinata is in danger. I'm the only one that can free her. Let me go. The other owls didn't listen, and continued to hold him down, and Kudos continued to stare wildly into space. The eye in his left socket continued to glow the blood red of a Mangekyo Sharingan. The Kage Civil War No. 3. Buffeting Wind Lava Plume. Oh, fuck you. Haku hadn't realized how annoying it was to fight a spacer-type fighter until he met one he couldn't sneak up on. Seriously, all she did was spam him with ranged attacks, try and catch him in the boil-release steam, and sick a vapor dragon on him if he ever got close. I've changed my mind. He shouted at her. This isn't interesting, it's fucking stupid. I want to swap out, can I take the rakeage instead? Oh, no. You've made your bed, now you get to lie in it. Mei glared at him, from within her cloud of impenetrable bullshit. And since when were you so vulgar? Sasuke must be rubbing off on me. Haku sighed. Not literally, disappointingly, but still. Ice Clone Jutsu. He summoned one copy of himself, linked arms with it, and threw it forwards. Unlike the mirrors, it began to melt the moment it entered the vapor, but ran through a set of hand seals before it could be destroyed. Ice release, flash freeze. Everything within a few meters of the clone dropped by about 100 degrees C in under a second, taking the boil release from deadly to mildly humid. Mei responded, launching another lava blast, but the clone threw up an ice mirror as it broke, catching the attack in midair. The real Haku darted in, coming up behind through the harmless water vapor and jumping into the mirror, then out the other side. Ice spear! He shouted, summoning the weapon ready to yeet it at any projectiles she aimed at him. Mei didn't shoot another lava ball at him. She jumped up and threw a tagged kunai at the ground beneath him. The explosion that went off threw him into an uncontrolled tumble rather than a graceful leap, and, yep, there's the fucking vapor dragon. He pulled up a small version of the ice mirrors as a shield as the jutsu crashed into him, shoving him upwards, away, and then down towards the ground. He slammed into the floor and cried out, as broken shards of wood dug up into his back. Haku's burnt fingers dropped the shield, and he rolled over to his front, looking up. Haku! Shouted Sai from the other side of the room, and Haku watched as the distracted boy got hit by a swinging branch of wood release, coughing up blood and being crushed into a wall. Sai! Haku screamed back, forcing himself to his feet. Don't think you're going anywhere. Spat Mei from behind him, vapor spreading out towards him. You still have business with me, sweetie. Haku closed his eyes. Breathed out. And turned back to her. You selfish, self-obsessed, idiotic, childish, pathetic excuse for a Kage. I've put up with you for 5 goddamn years, and if you get between me and my teammates anymore I am going to turn you into a fucking pincushion. Stubborn worm. She growled back. You could have had wealth. Power. You could have had me. What about that wasn't good enough for you? I'm gay, you ignorant bitch. He slammed his hands together. Demonic Ice Dragon Jutsu. Coiling up around him, the beast's cold scales crackled against each other, freezing all the moisture in the air around it, and it roared. This was the biggest, most chakra-exhausting, and most entirely ridiculous move he could pull out. He'd built it to try and counter the Raisin Shuriken, funnily enough. Flying up above Haku's head, it tore through the air down towards Mei. Lava Dragon Jutsu. She countered, firing up her own strongest attack towards his, the drake glowing red, yellow and orange as it flew roaring upwards. The two dragons met and exploded. What was left of the room's infrastructure just gave up, shards of roof and wall being thrown outwards as all the other combatants in the building were forced to pause what they were doing just to appreciate the moment. Shards of cooled stone and boiling hot water fell down from the collision point, and Mei made a very crucial mistake. She closed and shielded her eyes. She brought up her vapor tighter and higher, forming a bubble of safety around herself as the explosion subsided, which had the unfortunate side effect that even when she opened her eyes, it was too thick to see. You see, Mei was raised a privileged child. She had been born with an incredible gift, and taught to focus on training her elemental attacks above all else. As such, she had never achieved more than a basic level of competence in her country's patented art. That being, locating opponents by sound alone. There was a thud, and a cold hand landed on her shoulder. Hidden mist, said Haku. Hiding in the mist jutsu. Maybe look it up? Mei spun, seeing a figure completely covered in a thick sheen of ice that was melting rapidly, sure, but it only needed to last a second or so to let its occupant. Haku smiled, his ninja headband covering his eyes. Demonic ice mirrors jutsu. The prison flashed into existence around Mei, and she barely had time to start making hand seals before dozens of sinbon slammed into her arms, legs and back. Her muscles froze up, and she hit the floor. Now be a good little Mizukage and stay on the floor where you belong, Haku told her, from within one of the mirrors. I'm going to save my boyfriend. Try not to ruin your country's reputation anymore while I'm gone, okay? He paused, whispered that felt so good. And jumped away. We need to teamwork harder, Sasuke decided. That's the morale of the story, right? If we teamwork harder, we win instantly. Sounds good. How? Gaara asked. Impact successively smashed against the wall of sand he'd set up between them and their opponents. I don't know. Move. Sasuke reached across and yanked Gaara to the left, just in time for a beam of white light to disintegrate a section of the sand wall and a good chunk of the floor where he'd been stood. We're both badasses, but there isn't much room for our skills to overlap. Against anyone else you'd be able to control the terrain so I could fight them all individually, but these ones can fly and run stupidly fast, I know. Gaara refilled the hole. He was looking remarkably calm for the situation. So what do we do? I can't keep up this wool for much longer. We beat this the same way I beat Kimimaro. Sasuke sighed. By being smart. Kami, it's too early in the morning for this, with a shout of all right, round 2 start. The sand wall exploded outwards, and Sasuke was charging forwards, aiming for Inoki. The Reikage came in out of nowhere, with a spinning kick that took Sasuke's head off at the neck. Obviously not. Sasuke promptly disintegrated, not in the burst of a shadow clone, but instead revealed itself to be an animation of sand that quickly latched onto his body in every place it could. This sand wasn't imbued with wind to make it lighter, it was saturated in earth release, making it as heavy as physically possible. The Reikage wasted a moment trying to remove it by force, before more sand from the surrounding area latched onto him, pulling him downwards and attempting to smother him. That stopped him for about half a second, in total. A basically flexed and it was off. Lightning has advantage over Earth, and its sheer explosive power in a confined space blew the entire prison apart. But Sasuke, the real Sasuke, had already sprinted past him at that point, jumping upwards onto a levitating platform of sand. He was carrying Kubikurabocho, Zabuza's sword, and began to contemplate the dimensions of Inoki's neck as the sand flew him closer. The Tsuchikage hadn't been wasting his time and fired off a blast of particle release that would have disintegrated Sasuke if he'd stayed on a constant path, but the sand he was stood on launched him upwards, such that the white light only obliterated the sand and the soles of Sasuke's footwear. By that point, the Reikage was already blurring up towards him, hands positioned to grab and crush his throat. Sasuke let go of his sword. With a poof, Sasuke had been substituted with another of Gaara's sand clones down below, and the Reikage's fists buried themselves into it. Again, it attempted to forcibly lock his hands together, as Sasuke reappeared on the ground and Inoki leaned casually left to avoid the thrown sword. Fire style. Big fuck-off fire dragon jutsu. Sasuke shouted, feeling his chakra reserves dip to about a quarter as the largest technique he could fire blasted out towards his 2 opponents. Oh, that's just unfair. Why's yours so much bigger than mine? Shouted Haku, from some distance away. Bow chika bow wow. Gaara said in the most deadpan voice possible. I've got this. Inoki said, grabbing onto the Reikage with one hand and reaching the other outwards. Sweat was beading on his forehead. Particle style. Obliteration barrier. A large cube of light appeared, and as the fire dragon crashed into it, it just blinked out of existence, like the attack was paper being fed into a shredder. What Inoki did not notice was that Kubikurabocho hadn't simply fallen to the ground behind him, but paused in midair. Gar made a tiny motion with one finger, and the blade began flying towards Inoki's exposed back. Magnet release. If the opponents don't have metal you can control, bring it to them yourself. There was a tiny glint from the light on the metal, and the sword, inches from Inoki's skin, came into the Raikage's peripheral vision. He swore, grabbed Inoki, and flung him towards the box of particle style, using the momentum gained to fling himself upwards and catch the sword. Inoki was forced to dispel the barrier to prevent himself from being disintegrated by his own technique, but that still left him being caught by the tail end of Sasuke's fire technique. It was a highly singed Inoki that crashed down onto the floor of the building. "My beard," he groaned, "you burned my beard." Sasuke, exhausted, shouted over to him, "Well, maybe if you hadn't grown it so damn long, that wouldn't be a problem. Even Hiruzen never had a beard that crazy, and he look out." There was a snap, and a sonic boom. Gar pulled up sand in front of them both, but a pair of projectiles blasted through the wall like it wasn't even there, taking Sasuke in the right leg and Gar in the chest. Both fell to their knees, bitching loudly, and Sasuke looked down and realized that he had been impaled by a shattered half of Kubikurabocho. "Not bad," I called to them, walking up slowly. "But you're both still far too young to be picking fights like this?" Sasuke interrupted. "Yeah, shut your patronizing ass up, old man." Fine then." The Raikage blurred towards them. He was met by a purple shield, one much larger and much stronger than the ribcage that had briefly appeared earlier in the fight. Sasuke staggered to his feet with a shout of rage and pain, offering one hand to Gaara and pulling him up too, as the armored Susanoo came into being around them. Fuck the power of teamwork and tactics. He spat out some blood. The power of bullshit dojutsu spamming, that's where it's at. "Gaara?" The ex-Jinchuriki looked away from the sword still stuck in his chest and up at his partner. "L listening? New plan. Flail wildly at him with your sand. I'll set it all on fire with Amaterasu." Haku and Sai dove into the relative safety of the Susanoo just before the entire building began to tear itself apart. The bridge sagged. Mud dripped to the ground from either side, and Hinata and Naruto clashed on top, dueling on the unstable and viscous surface like it was smooth stone. "Stop it!" Naruto begged. "Turn it off, Hinata, you're killing yourself like hell." She shot back. With the Vishnu she was almost as fast as him, and with the forearms she was outclassing him in taijutsu again, as it should be. Not to mention he'd told her there were limits on how many shadow clones he could summon in Sage mode, and she was not going to let him make those hand seals. Of course, this entire strategy had one flaw. Naruto wasn't shutting up. Didn't he order the murder of your own damn family? That doesn't bother you? He shouted at her, even as she punched him on the face. I hated my family. My parents cared nothing for me besides my position as their heir. What about, she kicked him in the ribs, making him grimace, Hanabi? Your sister. You cared about her, right? Hinata laughed in his face. Hanabi? I made her up. I just needed an excuse to follow through with killing Itachi. Fuck, he did a real number on you, didn't he? Naruto landed a lucky hit to her gut and seemed to change tack. So he doesn't trust you not to betray him? That's what you think the Genjutsu's about? She hit him again, NGH, even in the fantasy world he's set up for you, he doesn't trust that you'll be able to hurt me? Oh, that touched a nerve, and her laugh was gone. Shut up. Because he knew that if he reset your memories entirely they'd clash with reality inside of 5 seconds. He had to make you think you were double-triple tricking yourself, just to try and get around the fact that you would never hurt either me or Sasuke. You're delusional. She kicked him into the air and punched him with all 4 fists at once, sending him flying backwards across the bridge again. And just because I know you believe something doesn't mean it's true. Heh. You're right. He wiped some blood off his face. I believe you care about me. She froze for a moment, stricken, and he grinned. Ha. See that? I didn't even mean anything by that statement, but the moment you thought your feelings were in doubt you were terrified enough. She ran for him again. He went to a kneel and punched downwards, hard. Enough force to stop a small meteorite slammed into the bridge and was the last straw for the structure. It began to collapse into the canyon with an agonizing groan. Hinata slipped as the floor broke apart beneath her, and Naruto jumped forwards, catching her with a kick that threw her into the canyon wall. She landed and kicked off back towards him, landing on a falling piece of masonry, and the two continued their duel as the bridge fell apart around them. "You think you love him?" Naruto accused her. "Yes." "You think he believes that?" "Yes." "Then take that goddamn genjutsu off and fight me without it." She swept low, forcing him to disconnect his legs from his piece of stone or lose them, and she grabbed his head with two of her hands and buried it in the brick. "How stupid do you think I am?" She held, bringing down an axe kick to catch him in the stomach and rocketing him downwards. He landed hard on the river down at the bottom of the ravine, sending a 2-meter wave outwards, but barely avoiding breaking the water's surface. "Oh yeah? What have you got to lose?" "Raisin shuriken." She threw herself sideways to avoid it, hitting the canyon wall, shouting, "You're not even trying to pretend you're not manipulating me." "Of course not. You'd see straight through that, and I'm a crap liar." He smiled, and charged another raisin shuriken. "My gambit's perfectly honest, out in the open. I dare you to take it off. Because if you really care about your master, you don't need it, right?" She sprinted down the canyon wall, overtaking the falling debris, and replying with, "I'm not betraying him. If you have it on, you can't prove you wouldn't, and he'll always doubt you. It would be a betrayal to take it off. It's weakness not to." Quadruple crystal Chidori. Hinata had no idea if her Kesho Deketsu was even meant to work the way she was using it, but her white eyes were more than willing to comply. Each of her arms lit up with lightning, and then that lightning was fed into a crystal lattice that built up in each hand, blades of white opal forming with electricity charging and charging inside until they were lit up like Christmas trees. She threw herself off the wall, down towards him. Naruto's eyes narrowed. "Buzumaki Raisin Shuriken Barrage." He countered, conjuring up 3 more of himself, all of whom charged a Raisin Shuriken in one hand. All 4 thrust their attacks upwards right at the moment Hinata met them. There was a brief moment of déjà vu. And then there was an explosion, and all the water within 50 meters evaporated, and all the grass and leaves fried, and all the dirt hardened and cracked, and all the stones glowed red hot, and millions of tiny holes pockmarked every surface around them. In the end, the 2 techniques cancelled out, and it was momentum that won. Hinata flew forwards and crashed into Naruto, and since he didn't have any more water to stand on, both were sent tumbling into the bottom of the riverbed. They hit the ground hard, and rolled eventually to a stop, as the remains of the bridge crashed to the ground around them. Naruto's sage reserves had run dry. Hinata knew it because he suddenly stopped in his attempt to get up, flopping flat onto his back on the ground. Without the borrowed Senjutsu chakra, there was nothing to keep him moving despite his blocked Tenketsu. "I won't give him the time to get any back." Hinata, on the other hand, was able to get to her feet. Her Vishnu body was cracked in many places, the false arms had disintegrated in the clash, and the numbness was spreading slowly towards her core, but she still stood, and walked over to her teammate. There was a quiet whoosh as Danzo dropped lightly to the ground nearby. "Put him out," the man said, almost boredly. "Yes, master," she replied, reaching with one hand towards Naruto's temple. One small pulse of chakra into his brain would be all it took to send him unconscious. Once he was there, she could keep him there for as long as was needed. He coughed, bruised, broken in a few places, and unable to open one eye, but he still worked his mouth enough to say breast pocket. She blinked. "What?" "My breast pocket," he said. "At least, I think that's what it's called, the weird zipper, on NGH, on my left I know what the fucking breast pocket is." She hissed. "Open it." "Why?" was what she said, but she was already moving to unzip it. She could see what was in there before she ever opened it, obviously, but it was something held inside a sealing scroll. One of the high-quality ones, too, designed to keep something protected from the outside world for long periods of time. She picked the scroll up, prepared herself for it to be some kind of bomb, and broke the seal. There was a small poof, and something small and light dropped into her hand. She looked at the thin metal plate, sewn onto a blue fabric, and blanched. It was a Konoha forehead protector. Why would he? Oh. Is this yours? He grinned up at her. I kept it. You asked me for a favor, remember? The hand holding it shook. The unblemished leaf symbol glinted in the sunlight. You promised me that once you were done with Orochimaru, and done with Neji, you'd wear it again. Hinata had no idea what to say. You can't. This doesn't mean you swore on everything you've ever cared about that you'd come back. Naruto accused her. Now if you meant that you were going to come back and join Sai's freaking Dark Master, then go ahead. Do whatever you want with me. But don't you dare do it with some genjutsu telling you what to think. Hinata, said Danzo, from behind her. He's trying to manipulate you. Ignore him. That is an order. Continue your objective, and do not betray me. Hinata brought one hand up to her face. She hadn't thought it was possible, but despite her opal exterior, she was crying. I will not betray you, master, she said. Her other hand clenched around the headband, almost hard enough to break it. I love him. I admit that. But you're my world. And this moron doesn't seem to believe it. She inhaled. Exhaled. So I'm going to prove it to him. Her hand rose up to her forehead. Hinata no Hinata yes. Hirajakoma. The world exploded into color. The threads of chakra throughout her head were laid out to her in painstaking detail, and she pinched onto just the right spot and pulled. The entire structure came loose all at once, and her mind was her own again. She brought the arm back down towards Naruto, preparing to finish the job, and stopped. Oh, fuck, she said, aloud. That was fucking close. Yeah, I know, right? Naruto chuckled. Genjutsu is an ass. And then Hinata realized that she was about to die. She turned around and blocked the shuriken that Danzo had thrown at her back with pitiful ease, and then staggered, because the numbness had almost overtaken her entire body. It was spreading deep within her, into her heart, and she immediately tried to cut out the Vishnu entirely, but everything inside her seemed to have frozen, and it just wouldn't start again first. Gate. Open. She bit out, snapping the chakra point within her temple, and that did the trick. Alongside possibly the worst pain she'd ever experienced in her life, her body essentially jump-started itself, white flaking off her skin as she crumpled to her knees with a scream, and her eyes returned to their normal shape and size. But she was free, and she was alive, and so she batted away the next set of shuriken Danzo threw. And she stood back up again. You made one crucial mistake, Puppet Master, she declared. There is nobody, and I mean nobody, who can overcome Naruto's talk no jutsu. I'll make a note of that, Danzo told her. I would ask, after I am gone, that you please do the best you can to look after my village. I'll make a note of that, she told him, fastening her headband back around her forehead where it belonged. And then she splattered his brains across the canyon wall. Yamato blinked as the Koto Amatsukami was released, and said yo, holy shit. Mifune blinked as the Koto Amatsukami was released, and said yo, holy shit. A large group of officials, clan heads, and influential figures in Konoha blinked as the Koto Amatsukami was released, and said yo, holy shit. The entire roster of Root blinked as the Koto Amatsukami was released, and said yo, holy shit. The Fire Daimyo blinked as the Koto Amatsukami was released, and said yo, holy shit. Fugaku Uchiha, sat in a jail cell, blinked as the Koto Amatsukami was released, and said yo, holy shit. Mei Terumi was passed out on the floor as the Koto Amatsukami was released, and didn't say anything, but probably would have blinked and said yo, holy shit. If she could have. Gaara, Inoki and A blinked as the Koto Amatsukami was released, and said yo, holy shit. This was a serious surprise to Sasuke, who for a critical moment didn't squish those latter two's heads in with the gigantic fists of his Susanoo while he had them both held still. Immediately afterwards, the pain in his eyes peaked to a maximum and then ceased. He saw the Susanoo wink out, and then only blackness. A hooded man, alone in the woods, blinked as the Kotoha Mitsukami was released, and said, "Yo, holy shit." Then he went, "OH, you sly son of a bitch, that was why." Sai blinked as the Kotoha Mitsukami was released, and said, "Yo, holy shit." Then he paused. Blinked again. A childlike expression of wonder came over his usually deadpan face. "I'm free. Truce. Everyone truce while we figure out what the fuck just happened." Sai's brain, entirely unused to functioning without the deeply embedded Jinjutsu, basically decided it wanted a full system reboot. His eyes rolled back into his head, and he collapsed on the floor, and despite all the circumstances it would be the best sleep he'd had in years. Wool over your eyes. Truce. Truce. Everybody stand down while we figure out what the hell just happened. Sasuke sagged to the floor, unsure whether to reach up to his eyes or down to his leg. The former weren't working, and the latter still had a giant slab of metal stuck in it, so neither were doing so hot. "Hey, Haku?" he called out. "If you're there, definitely heal Gaara first, but please get to me at some point after that. Please do heal Gaara first," said Gaara, from somewhere next to Sasuke. "He's bleeding quite profusely." "Seriously, none of you guys learned any healing?" Hold on. Haku's voice dropped down to next to them, and Sasuke felt a hand on his leg. "Seriously, I beat my Kage on my own and you lot have to be healed after dealing with yours?" "Yeah, but me's fodder," said Sasuke, Gaara, Kankuro, and everyone else who was still conscious all at once. "Oh fuck you." Haku yanked, and Sasuke screamed with a depressing lack of testosterone as half of Kubikurabocho was yanked out of his leg. "OW, Kami, dude, sure, I wasn't using that leg for anything. Aoao, quit being a baby." Haku held up the bloodied, obnoxiously large blade in one hand, looking at its broken center with some melancholy. "Guess this is busted." "Sorry, old master, just stick it next to the other half in a pool of blood," someone advised from behind them. "Its whole shtick is that it repairs itself with the iron, it'll put itself back together." "Oh, good shout," Sasuke remarked, gratefully. Then, wait, what the fuck? He heard everyone else around him have similar reactions. Everyone who could was jumping away from the unidentified person who was suddenly right there without any of them noticing. "Oh, come on," said the strange voice. "What kind of reaction is that? Is it because my pussy pops the feeling, and yours don't? Okay, that one was a stretch." "Haku, what are we looking at?" Sasuke hissed. "Skinny dude. Akatsuki cloak. Orange mask." Haku whispered back. "Just appeared out of nowhere." "Saw dudes," said the stranger. "Okay, no vision is already pissing me off, this sucks. So, looks like you all finally dealt with Danzo. Good for you. I was watching that guy, it was hilarious." "Were you working with him?" I demanded. "Pfft, nah." The stranger chuckled. "Oh, right, you're all confused because your memories have just rebooted themselves. Yet Danzo's been building up subtle Jinjutsu on basically the whole ninja world. Like he could completely rewrite a person's whole memory once per day. For the last decade. I've had to step in a couple times to stop him from literally taking over the whole world." "You're welcome." "Hey, buddy," Sasuke called out. "Not to burst your bubble, but the Akatsuki are finished. We killed its boss. First, as I recall, Naruto killed Pain while you were literally dead, so miss me with that wee shit," pointed out the stranger. "And second, just because Nagi-kun thought he was in charge doesn't mean he actually was." Everyone in the room tensed at the ramifications of that statement. "Who are you?" Haku asked. "Who, little old me?" The stranger grinned. "I've been going by Toby for the last few months. You'd know me as Madara Uchiha." Everyone tensed. "Bull," declared Haku. Didn't Hashirama kick his ass like 100 years that something made him pause? "Hashirama was a punk bitch," said Madara. "And yes, that is a Mangekyo Sharingan that you're looking at." What's in your other eye? The Raikage asked. Hopes and prayers. Madara deadpanned. Now, as to the purpose of my visit. You may have noticed that your bijou have been getting going walkabout over the last few weeks. That was us. And we're currently 7 down, 2 to go on our collection. So I was hoping you'd maybe gimme yours? There was a shuffling, and Sasuke imagined that the people who weren't blind were all looking at each other in confusion. No? Inoki offered. Please? Said Madara. Pretty please? Look, asshole. The sound of the Raikage's lightning cloak burst back to life. I don't know who you think you are, but then there was a pause, and he went HRK. And then a thud. And I didn't even need Tsukiyomi to do that. Madara remarked, not having moved. Eat your heart out, Itachi. I had Yugura eating out of my palm for years, and he was a perfect Jinchuriki. That was you? Haku demanded. Oh yeah, my bad. I would have let Ao notice it after I was done, but I needed the Byakugan, so I killed him. That was you? Demanded Mei, who had apparently woken up at some point. Damn, I should just shut my mouth. Madara muttered. At this rate, I might accidentally tell you about that time I let the Kyuubi loose on Konoha and killed the 4th Hokage. There was a long pause. Sasuke started pushing the threat level up button in his brain as quickly as he could. Anyway. Madara drew the word out. Where was I? Right, yeah, give me the 8 tails and the 9 tails or else. Or else what? Challenged Inoki. Or else the Akatsuki declares war on the entire ninja world. Madara breezed. Now, admittedly that's like, 4 people, and one of those is finna catch these hands, and one of them can't fight worth a damn, but I'm pretty confident about our chances. You're gonna take on all 5 ninja villages at once with 2 fighters? Sasuke confirmed. No, of course not. Madara chuckled. That would be dumb. Kisame is mostly just gonna be used for scouting. I'm going to take on all 5 ninja villages by myself. You're fucking crazy. Sasuke decided. Well, if any of you think that you could take on Hashirama for 24 hours straight, let me know, and I'll rethink my chances. The intruder offered, smugly. Actually, the Hyuuga girl is close enough to read my lips and brain patterns by now. I'm confident I can take on anything you lot have to throw at me. There, she can tell you if I was lying when she gets here. Then why are we still alive? Haku challenged. Here we all are, tired from combat, all in one spot. Why aren't you fighting us now? Because if I kill you all, I won't be able to find Killer Bee, Madara replied, with what might have been a shrug. At least, it'll take me a while. But if I threaten you with death and challenge you to a fight, then both him and the Uzumaki kid will have to take to the battlefield to protect you all, and I'll be able to wrap this up much quicker. Also, a new chapter of Aika Paradise finally releases next week, and I want to read that first. Jiraiya's dead. Haku pointed out. Madara snorted. Sure, whatever. So, last chance bijou please? Sasuke piped up. I think I speak for all of us when I say no thank you, and also go fuck yourself. See you on the battlefield. All right then. Madara replied. So be it. May the 4th Ninja War begin. After a 2-week time skip. YET. There was a very strange noise, and then nothing. I swear to God if I don't get sight back in the next few hours, Sasuke growled. Yeah, now you know how it feels. Kankuro complained from somewhere to his left. There was a whoosh, and Naruto's voice came in from another side. Whoa, you lot did an absolute number on this building. There's not even a building left, it's just a pile of rubble. Hey, what happened while we were off killing Danzo? There was another long pause. Absolutely nothing. Sasuke told him. Right, guys? Some hours later, you're sure it's a good idea to lie to Naruto? Hinata asked Sasuke. The pair sat together in Itachi's hospital room. I hate it too, trust me. Sasuke winced. But are you sure Madara was telling the truth? About everything he said after he noticed me, at least. Hinata explained. He does think he can take on everybody, and he does want the bijou. He might be overestimating himself, but I've encountered him before. He's not stupid, and he's not crazy. And if Naruto learns what's coming, he'll want to be on the front lines. Sasuke sighed. Which is exactly what the Akatsuki want. Apparently A is off with B making a similar excuse. Whatever Madara wants to do with the beasts, we can't let him get away with it. Even if it means depriving us of two of our strongest fighters? Hinata pointed out. I don't know. Sasuke grimaced. It was strange for Hinata to look at his face. Red eyes that had once been so piercing and distinct were broken. There were no tomo in his pupils, and the red had sort of leaked across his sclera. Blood dropped on occasion from the corners of his eyes. I'm not used to making these kinds of decisions. Itachi? Any hints? The older Uchiha sibling was also painful to look at. His hair had grayed, and his face was a similar color. His eyes were closed, and he was laid back on his bed, having tried to sit up earlier and failed. Wearing a light blue hospital gown, with drips feeding fluids into one arm, Itachi looked nothing like the fearsome ninja who had rivaled Hinata's cousin. Nothing, he said. His voice was weak, barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, but I don't know this guy. Toby only showed up fairly recently, and Neji never got near him. We all thought Pain was the mastermind, and even then we didn't know what he wanted with the bijou. He made a small smile. Our scheming ended with finishing Danzo. Good job on that, by the way. Did he use the Koto Amatsukami? He did. Hinata replied, throwing out a sarcastic, thanks for warning us about that, by the way. Oh, don't complain too hard. Itachi reprimanded her. We give you kudos, what more do you want? Hinata frowned. Kudos? What does he have to do with this? Itachi frowned right back. Kudos didn't hold on. How did you break out of the Jinjutsu? I spoke to Naruto for more than 60 seconds, and then used the Hiragikoma on it. Hinata explained. Oh. Itachi licked his lips and gulped. Well, now I feel bad. What did you do? Neji put Shirsue's other eye in Kudos. Itachi coughed. It may have initially been a deliberate sound, but it quickly devolved into an actual fit while Hinata shouted what? At him. It's, ugh, fuck, we programmed it with a command to protect the Hidden Leaf Village. He continued, while trying to regain control of himself. And the eyes are linked together. The plan was that if anyone tried to catch you in the Koto Amatsukami, Kudos would be compelled to come out and hit you with another one on top. It would keep you on the good guy's side until you could end the fight and get back to a Jinjutsu specialist to remove them both. We thought the Hiragikoma might have been able to counter it, but we didn't want to risk it. He came out of that looking like he'd been tortured. Hinata accused. He was under Jinjutsu anesthetic the whole time, shouldn't have felt a thing. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded. Because you would have taken the eye out of him again. And then you might have died. Hinata growled and put her hands together, planning to make the summoning symbol, and Itachi continued, please, don't remove it. It's not hurting Kudos, I promise, and you might need it in the future. Now you've destroyed Danzo's eye, it's the only Koto Amatsukami in existence. He was telling the truth, and he was so desperate. Hinata dropped her hands, slowly. They were shaking. I hate you. She muttered. So much. You just trample over everyone's happiness in the name of the greater good. And then you have the nerve to lie there and apologize for it. I never wanted to, I know. Hinata snapped at him. I can tell. You're genuinely sorry, and that makes it worse. She sat down again and sighed. Why couldn't you just be an asshole like Danzo? I wouldn't feel so bad about wanting to kill you, yeah. Itachi sighed. That's what Neji was going for the whole time. They were all quiet for a while. She watched Sasuke open his mouth, probably to try and mount a defense for his sibling, but then he closed it again. How's the Gokii? Itachi asked, eventually. Hinata smiled, grimly, and held her hand out over a candle flickering in the corner. The flame washed over her fingers, and she couldn't feel a thing. Bad. I had to use the gates to bring myself back after my last use. Everything's cold. I can't feel anything except my own heartbeat. Kami, Hina Sasuke shuddered. Ignore my bitching, I'll keep the blindness. You have the 4 arms? Itachi checked. I do. She nodded, knowing the gesture was probably pointless. That's the equivalent of the full-body Susanoo. As the Vishnu progresses, it goes from a surface-level armor and spreads inwards, converting your whole body. We call it opal or crystal, while Amaterasu feeds off and burns all chakra. Keshodoketsu's constructs are chakra-proof. They conceal your tenketsu, block draining or linking attempts, and don't let any chakra through except yours. Itachi grimaced. If you try to use it again, it will spread to your heart and freeze it solid. I know. She replied. It was something she could just feel, intuitively. Like Han Solo in Carbonite. Sasuke nodded, sagely. Damn it, read the mood, Sasuke. Hinata Itachi didn't look happy about continuing. You may have to use it again. She realized what he was aiming for. No. You wouldn't even need to transplant them, no. Just touching them to the Vishnu should do the trick, no. She shouted, standing. As an afterthought, she pulled her now singed hand away from the candle. Please. Itachi begged. It's the only thing Neji has left that he can do to help. They are the eyes of the man who murdered my sister. Hinata shivered in revulsion. I'm not putting them inside myself. And anyway, I only have one of them. One eye would still be enough to Itachi stopped. Wait, what do you mean you only have one? Hinata's Byakugan focus fell on one spot in her jacket, where a particular storage scroll was kept. I tore his eye out during the fight. I was halfway back to Konoha before I realized I hadn't let go of it. What? Then where's the other one? Itachi demanded, forcing himself up onto his elbows in a sudden burst of desperation even as Sasuke started yelling at him to calm down. I don't know. Still in his corpse at the hideout. Hinata replied. You didn't body bag him? Itachi shouted. You were blackmailing me to go back to Konoha. I didn't have time to body bag him. Itachi's entire body shook, and his voice cut out, suddenly. The machines hooked up to him began beeping worryingly. His blind eyes focused on her, and with what had to be the last of his strength, he lifted his right arm and pointed one finger. The genjutsu hit her with the subtlety of a freight train and the strength of wet paper mache, and she had to go out of her way to pick it apart and comprehend it rather than dispel it. When she realized what he had just sent her, she gasped out loud. Oh, shit. She muttered, and ran out the door. Itachi crashed back onto the bed, and Sasuke was by him in an instant. You fucking maniac, bro, Kami. Nurse. Can I get some help in don't? Itachi told him, even weaker than before. Let them help the people they can actually help. You can be helped. Sasuke told him. Remember? You said you know how Tsunade can heal you. That procedure will take days, Sasuke. Itachi said, gently. I have minutes. What kind of little bitch talk is I'm done, brother? The fight's over. Sasuke tried to hold it together for another second or so, before giving up entirely. All the self-control and false high spirits he'd been holding up for the last week crashed down all at once, and he threw himself forward, grabbing his brother in a hug and sobbing uncontrollably. "'S not fair." He bitched, bitchily, and he knew he was bitching and there were tears running down his face and he didn't care. You were supposed to live. We won, we fucking did it and you're still hey. Easy. Itachi rested one hand on Sasuke's back. It's all right, it's not all right. Sasuke gulped, trying to get the words out, primal terror running through him. You're not allowed to die, not after all this bull crap. Not after I finally know everything about you. Not after I've forgiven you. Now that's not fair. You've always known me. Sasuke could feel his brother smiling. Don't worry. I've spent my whole life working towards one thing, keeping you safe. And I've done it. That's more than enough for me. Have you, Sasuke sniffed? Have you said goodbye to Mom and Dad? To Izumi? I have. I've told them everything. Itachi's grip was getting weaker by the second. Mom and Dad understand. Thanks for your advice about spending time with them. I'm glad I could sort that out before this all ended. Izumi, heh. I got the ride of my life, fucking asshole. Sasuke made a noise that might have been a laugh, might have just been more crying. Hey. Itachi whispered. Hinata, Naruto, they're your teammates. If I've learned one thing in my life, if there's one thing I haven't fucked up, never let them go, you hear me? No matter what happens. That's what the will of fire is all about. I will. Sasuke promised. And thank you. For everything you've done. He shifted, pressing his forehead against Itachi's. I love you, bro gay. Itachi snorted, crying as well. I love you too. He let out a breath and went limp. The machine that had been beeping beside the bed transitioned to a long drone. Sasuke's breath caught. Then he just sagged. He stayed like that for a while. After a few minutes, he heard loud footsteps, and someone ran into the room behind him. Sasuke! Shouted a voice he immediately placed as Sakura. It's Tsunade. She's woken up. If you give her a few hours to get back on her feet, she could. Oh. Sasuke straightened, taking his weight off Itachi and standing on his own. Good. He replied, voice even. He reached out with one finger and poked Itachi's forehead, like Itachi had done to him back when they were kids. Tell her to get in here as soon as she's ready. But I know. It's too late. Sasuke turned to her, and he wasn't just a boy anymore. For him, but not for us. Tell Tsunade she needs to prep for an eye transplant. How's Kudos? Hinata checked, wind whipping at her hair. Good. Forsooth replied, from beneath her. The mania ended right after your fight. All right. Good. She replied, distractedly, looking at her destination. Apparently, he shouldn't get anything else like that in the future. And what of his eye? Forsooth asked her, turning his head round to look at her. He doesn't claim it is harming him, but I am loath to simply leave it there. Hinata paused for a moment, then shook her head. No. Don't interfere with it. I'll come up to check on it soon. Very well. I know. She slipped off Forsooth's back long before he could glide down normally, plummeting a good 50 feet. The roof of the old hideout rose up to meet her, and she landed in a crouch. Her eyes showed her some mild tissue damage to her legs from the collision, but she didn't feel any pain. Everything was mostly unchanged from her battle here. The rubble was still roughly where she remembered it being, and Neji's remains, made from hard ivory as they were, no birds had tried their luck feasting on them, were still present. Mostly. She walked up to where most of him had ended up, a few arms and, well, chunks of him were scattered elsewhere, and moved to confirm what her Byakugan had shown her from kilometers away. Annoyingly, they hadn't lied to her. Neji's face was cracked and crumpled all over. His nose was busted in, and his mouth was still in that satisfied smile, all as she remembered. Except that both his eyes were missing. And there was a letter perched delicately on his chest, addressed to the earthbound heir of Himura Otsutsuki. Son of a bitch. Several days later, this is it? Naruto asked, squinting down at the map, then up at the small dock in front of him. There was a single, shabby-looking boat moored there. Apparently, Yamato said, from his left. You've not read it wrong. We're meeting the Jinchuriki of the Eight Tails by that. The Umbu Jonin had been through one hell of a recuperation period following the release of the Koto Amatsukami, but seemed to be looking fit for duty. Naruto had volunteered to take him along, citing the power of the talk no jutsu as a way to keep him in line in case he regressed in some way. He had been slightly worried when everyone had thought that was a perfectly reasonable and generous offer, and not just a joke. It's possible that this is some kind of test, mused guy from Naruto's other side. Then his face lit up. Perhaps the challenge is that we will be swimming to our location. We can run on water, remember? Naruto pointed out. Yeah, but where would be the fun in that? Hey, I think we should all do it blindfolded. Everyone turned to see a trio of ninja walking up to them. Hinata, Kankuro, and Sasuke. Naruto cheered, walking over to meet him. I see you're copying Kankuro's look. Ooh, you gonna do the face paint next? You know, most people might have led with, hey Sasuke, how was the dangerous experimental eye surgery, but I'm glad you got straight to the important matter. Dickweed. Sasuke, grinning, reached one arm up to pull slightly at the medical bandaging over his eyes. The two met in a rough hug. You doing okay? After Naruto muttered, when they were close. I'm managing. Sasuke replied, in a similarly low tone. Spent some time with the family, and, I'm holding together. You know, if you ever want to talk, I know, dude. Thanks. I might. Naruto broke off, and continued at normal volume. So why were you here? Just seeing me off? Nope. Kankuro replied. Me and Sasuke are coming with you. I'm your link to Suna while you're off on some island in the middle of nowhere, and this guy wants me to teach him what I know about fighting blind. I've got a waiting period of a couple weeks before the new eyes do their thing, if they ever do. Sasuke explained. Something to do with my brain rewiring to the new hardware. I figured, hey, might as well get a learning experience out of it. Also, apparently Konoha's in total chaos right now, and I don't want to be part of it. Oh, dope, more friends. Naruto leaned left, looking over Sasuke's shoulder. Hinata? You coming too? I'm here to follow the rule you set. The one about needing to consult you before running off on my own. The Hyuga replied, looking incredibly embarrassed at having to admit to her leash. Something's come up. A family matter. Naruto groaned. More family matters? Do you have even any family members left to have? Oh, Kami, I'm sorry, it's fine. She waved it off, rolling her eyes. Someone's nicked one of Neji's eyes, and taunted me about it. Since we've all seen how dangerous these things can be, I'm going to confront them and get it back. Where are you headed? Sasuke asked. The moon. Hinata replied, breezily. Ha. All right then, keep your secrets. Sasuke glanced, well, you know, he made the head motion, across at Naruto. What do you think? Do we let her go? Naruto narrowed his eyes at her. Are you gonna get yourself killed? No. Hinata sighed. Are you gonna go live with a terrorist for 5 years? No, this is so demeaning. Well, all right. Naruto shrugged. I trust you. Besides, you're out of people to take revenge on. Like, literally, you've hit 100% of the main revenge list and all the optional targets. Mission synchronized, you're good. Go relieve some stress and hunt down someone who's in way over their head. He walked over to her and put a hand on her shoulder. Just be careful, okay? She blushed a little. Then smiled. I promise. Before he could react, Hinata had leaned forwards and closed all the remaining space between them, grabbing him by the lapels. No. Oh, I'm being kissed. By the time he was able to process that there were lips on his lips, it was already over, Hinata taking a step backwards with a grin on her face. Been waiting far too long to do that for real. Good luck. She put her hands together and vanished with a body flicker. Naruto brought a hand up to his mouth and mouthed what the fuck, before looking behind him to see everyone else there smirking at him. I am so mad I can't see your face right now. Sasuke told him. All right then. Naruto coughed. Training trip, right? Great, let's go on a training trip, let's, warm lips stop it, let's do that. Where's this bee again? Well, the girl with the Byakugan has left, without telling us. Yamato came to his rescue, allowing the subject change. Are there any instructions on the map? Naruto looked. Yeah, actually. Oh, okay, there's an all-clear signal here, let's look, oh boy. He cleared his throat. Ahem. How many shrimps do you have to eat, before it makes your skin turn pink? Eat too much and you'll get sick, shrimps are pretty rich. There was a pause of 3 beats. Iwaiwayo, it's childish Gambino homegirl drop it like the NotAsDark, move white the surface of the water erupted as a ninja with a lightning headband and a big-ass steel sword jumped out of the water, landing in a pose on the shore and rapping the whole time. Oh, damn, I like this guy. Naruto said, immediately. Naruto Uzumaki, declared the new arrival, shaking himself dry. I was expecting someone of your reputation to be a little older. Oh milordies, Killer B. Sasuke replied on Naruto's behalf. You're shorter than I expected. A second passed. Konoha scum. B shot back, grinning. We have a job to do, Sasuke, try not to upset him. Naruto replied, finishing the quote, as Sasuke whispered across, okay, I like this guy too. So. B clapped his hands together. You're the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, huh? I'm B, as you apparently know. I'm here to give you Bija lessons. Yeah, that's what they said this was. Naruto frowned. Not sure how you plan to help, though. I've already let as much of it out as I can without it killing me. And unless you can supercharge my yin release, I've heard all about your tricks. Nah, we're going deeper than that. B replied. You've done pretty well on your own. But how would you like to become a perfect Jinchuriki? I mean, that sounds pretty subjective, like how do you define perfect? Shut up and get on the boat. Training montage 10 interrupted. That, Naruto remarked, looking up at a pretty dope waterfall, is a pretty dope waterfall. I know, right? It's a surprise tool that will help us later. B dropped his pack of gear on the grass and sat down next to it. The island they were on was nice enough. Scenic. Cliffs basically covered the entire coastline, leaving no way for outside eyes to see what was on the inside. Turns out, once they'd left the dock and passed through a tunnel, that inside was actually a fairly pretty grove-wide place with butterflies and trees and all that, with a couple of building complexes where their group had made camp. It was 2 bases, in a boxed canyon, in the middle of nowhere. It was boring as hell after the first 5 minutes. So, Bijou. B stretched out, lying back. Tell me everything you know. They're the split-off remnants of the 10 Tails, the monstrous manifestation of the God Tree, or Shinju Tree. Naruto recited. They were made by Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the Sage of 6 Paths, using the creation of all things technique. They all have their own personalities, and all have fragments of the 10 Tails chakra, which means a hell of a lot of chakra, and have different abilities and specialties due to the splitting process. The QB is the strongest, the bitchiest, and doesn't have any special powers really because he doesn't need to when he can fire Bijou bombs that can decimate entire countries. B tilted his head. Kid, what the fuck? What? How do you know that? Fox told me. Naruto shrugged. What, you don't know? As a matter of fact, IB turned to glare into the middle distance. Yo Gyuki, what the fuck? You never told me half of this shit. I thought you were supposed to be teaching me. Naruto remarked, a little smugly, before frowning. Wait, you know yours name? Mine won't tell me. B closed his mouth and sighed. You know what? Just come here. He held a hand out. Naruto hesitated, then took it, and with a flash they weren't in the clearing anymore. Naruto let out an impressed whoa at B's mindscape. It was a lake, by the looks of it, with wooden buildings on palisades and bridges between them rising above the waves. After a moment, there was a great roaring of water, and a massive maroon shape burst above the surface, sending meter-high waves in all directions that crashed into the shore B and Naruto were standing on. It was "Are you a bull octopus?" Naruto shouted, gleefully. "That's awesome. Well met, Uzumaki Naruto," said the creature, one tentacle reaching above the water and waving in a very adorable manner. "I am Gyuki. You will likely know me as the Hachibi, or the Eight Tails." "Cool," Naruto enthused, feeling like a 12-year-old again. He turned round. "Hey Kyubi, look. It's one of your, The occurred when Naruto finally noticed the stark, sudden separation between the two mindscapes. A neat line separated B's scenic, beautiful landscapes from Naruto's sewer. The Kyubi, from behind its bars, looked up and huffed before closing its eyes. Yeah, sorry about the mess." Naruto winced. "It looked better, I swear, but I had a bit of a mental breakdown and trashed it and, was a bit busy after that. I wasn't expecting visitors," he shouted deeper into the sewer Kyubi. "Get up, we have guests." "I'm not talking to lying rat traders," the Nine Tails growled. "Now brother," scolded Gyuki. "When have I ever you really want to go there? When have I recently lied to or betrayed you?" "Oh, not that I know of." "I didn't mean you." The fox didn't open its eyes. "I meant the brat." "Oh, come on, are you still pissy about that?" Naruto complained. "Dude, it was like a literal act of kami." What happened?" B leaned in. "I was gonna let the Kyubi kill me after I killed the bad guy, but then the bad guy brought all my friends back to life." Naruto summarized. "And now somebody won't stop sulking about it." "Hey Gyuki, is there a liar talking?" the Kyubi called out. "If there is, I can't hear him. Because I don't let negativity like that into my life." Gyuki sighed. "Come now, you're being unreasonable, Kate. Don't. Say my name or I will tear you to pieces." The fox was on his feet in an instant, glaring across at his fellow Bijou and emanating red chakra that splashed against his cage. "You would tell him about father, but not your own name?" Gyuki asked, sounding upset. "Brother dad's dead, Ki. The kids still got to deal with me," the fox grumbled, turning back away from them. "But the sharing of names is essential to perfecting the bond," protested Gyuki. "How can you hope to become a perfect not interested? I could just tell him. Again, I would kill you. You're imprisoned in there," Gyuki reminded him. "Technically, you can't do anything to me. I can tell them both about what you did to that poor fisherman's wife." The Kyubi grinned, frighteningly. "In detail." Gyuki froze. "You wouldn't." "I would. It was 700 years ago." The octopus seemed to be blushing, and she asked, "Okay, and nobody saw my ass." "There's a painting." "There's a what?" Naruto clapped his hands, loudly, deciding he did not want to know what that was all about. "So perfect, Jinchuriki. You two keep talking about it, what's it mean?" B, looking very perturbed by the bickering Bijou, shook his head and looked down at Naruto. "Right, yeah. So it's a well-known fact that when a Bijou feeds chakra to its Jinchuriki, the host's own chakra network gets stronger due to the two interacting. The beast can give you chakra using the tail's cloaks. Everyone can use the version 0 with no tails appearing, and the one tails version 1. Now each Bijou's one tail's cloak is the same, only Shikaku can't do more than 1, Matatabi can't do more than 2, Isabu's max is 3, you get the gist. Once you're using half of your beast's tails, it goes from version 1 to version 2, and stops being a chakra cloak and starts being a physical transformation. Even bigger power-up. How far have you gotten?" 8 tails version 2. Naruto recounted. I first went V2 in 4 tails? That's less than half of 9? He's always been an overachiever. said Gyuki, chuckling. Well, whatever. B shrugged. Now if the beast tries and succeeds to take control, either by putting you unconscious or killing you, it will gradually transform into its full beast form. I hear this is what the Kazekage kid did when he attacked Konoha, right? But the trick is, if you can really start cooperating with your bijou, you can make that happen willingly. I can pull out tentacles and shit, or turn into a full-on giant octopus bull. Cool Naruto's eyes widened. Can I do that? Hell no. Interrupted the fox. I mean, you could, but why would you? I can give you KCM. KC who? Naruto asked. It's only the best power-up ever. The QB replied, smugly. Out of all the loser power-ups you've got so far. Better than Sage Mode. Can I have it? No, I just thought I'd tell you about how cool it is since you're never ever going to get it ever. Mlay. Bitch. Brat. B leaned in and whispered, how have you two not killed each other yet? Oh, this is just the way we talk, don't worry about it. Naruto waved him off. Go on. You were expositioning. Right, where was I? B snapped his fingers and a diagram appeared, floating in the air of his mindscape. If you want to get the beast transformation, and all sorts of other good shit, you need to allow the flow of your chakra back into the bijou's supply. The diagram was a rough picture of two chakra pools, one with a crude person drawn on it and one with a crude fox. As B gestured, passages appeared between the two and the chakra began to flow between them. This lets the benefits of the chakra mixing go both ways, buffing both of you. There are lots of tricksy ways to start this process off, but eventually you reach a point where you both share chakra freely and willingly, and there's basically no distinguishing between the two different pools. At that point, you're a perfect Jinchuriki. This is the bit that requires you sharing names, and it's the bit where I have to be free of the seal, so I kill you. The fox spoke up. Hey Gyuki. Why isn't your human dead yet? We tight. Gyuki replied, simply. Oh yeah, Gyuki could technically break out and start a rampage at any time. B said, casually. I'd have to fight him, la-di-da, you know the deal. That was what happened a couple decades ago when the third Raikage was kicking his ass every other week. But he won't, 'cause we tight. This sounds massively dangerous. Naruto gulped. Why do we even try for this? Oh, it's risky. B agreed. The only perfect Jinchuriki I know of are me and the ex-Mizukage, Yagura. Maybe one or two others since the end of the Warring States period, since that's when the process was made. Mizukage. Naruto corrected, proudly. My good friend Haku, qualified badass, has that hat now. He paused. Wait, shit, that means both my international friends have beaten me to Kage, damn it. But the benefits are worth it. B continued, apparently deciding to just ignore Naruto's outbursts. A perfect Jinchuriki has access to all that combined chakra, meaning they have the raw power of a bijou focused through the skill set a ninja. Strength and versatility. You can spam high-powered techniques until the cows come home. I think you're underestimating how much I can already do that. Naruto pointed out. Kit, you have a lot of chakra. The Nine Tails spoke up from behind him. The fact that it's even relative to mine is crazy, it really is. But you don't even have half as much as me, and remember I've only got half of my chakra. Do some maths on that. You only have half your chakra? Gyuki frowned. Long story. The QB stood up and looked at them all. Look, kiddies, it's been fun. Little brother, it was good to catch up. But let me be clear, I am not allowing anyone else to take advantage of me and my power. Put me in front of a Rinnegan or a Sharingan again, I will happily lend you my power to crush anyone who possesses those disgusting eyes. But beyond that? Either let me out, or leave me alone. There was a jolt, and the two were back in the canyon. That could have gone better. Naruto sighed. We'll need to give him a few days to chill before I try and talk to him again. You know, it's your mindscape. B pointed out. You should be able to go in there whenever, whether he wants you to or not. Yeah, but I'm not gonna invade his privacy like that. Naruto wrinkled his nose. Who knows what he's doing in there? Trust me, I'm the victim of the event neither Sasuke or Hinata are ever allowed to talk about. I'm a big fan of protecting personal space. Heh. Well, there's one thing we can do in the meantime. Naruto looked across at B. Oh yeah? What? B grinned. Meditation. Ugh. Whatever, pervy sage, I'll get right on it. What did you just call me? Naruto's face tightened. And nothing. Don't worry about it. Sasuke jumped, flinging kunai left and right, before landing on top of a puppet. He heard it make an impressive rendition of a scream before he ripped its head off, dropping to the floor behind it. He heard the whistling of a blade coming in towards his head and brought a sword up to block it. He did not hear the wooden leg that swept out from behind him, cutting his legs out and dropping him to the floor. 12 seconds and a bit. Called Kankuro from one side. Fuck you. Sasuke groaned, getting back to his feet. You can't ask me to time you and then get pissed when I do it. I can and I will. Sasuke stretched. I was making progress that time. Let's go again. Why are we even doing this? Kankuro asked. You get your sight back inside of a fortnight, right? Exactly. I've got a short period where I can do this without cheating. Sasuke sighed. Look. Do you know how many fights I've had to win using my bullshit dojutsu? Because the answer is, like, most of them. It feels kinda like cheating, like, I don't know, I'm only winning 'cause of this power I was born with. You had to watch your teammates and sibling die to get those powers. Kankuro reminded him. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Point is, I want to prove I can do it without all that. That I'm more than the eyes. Replied Kankuro, sounding distracted. And that's why there was a tug, and Sasuke yelped as something grabbed one of his legs and yanked him upwards, dangling him above the ground. 0 and a bit seconds. Kankuro told him. What was that about improving? Fuck you. Hinata walked through the cave. It had a bunch of weird glowy ball things in it, and she had no idea what they were and didn't particularly care. Weirder still was that they all seemed to show her images of her childhood. It was, like, 80% Naruto. That was a little embarrassing. She spied an exit to the cave and moved towards it, taking a second to curse the fact that she couldn't see everything properly. She knew she could use her base Byakugan without it killing her, but something about this cave was ruining her vision. There was something about the place that was messing with the fabric of the world around her and making her dojutsu less than useless. Her gut said that there was some kind of space-time ninjutsu going on, and if there was one thing any genin had learned from school, it was you do not screw around with space-time ninjutsu without a PhD in the subject. Not unless you want to end up with that one guy whose corpse is currently sharing atom space with Konoha's cliff. So she allowed the lack of vision, for now. And as she approached the exit, her thoughts went to the letter she had found atop Neji's corpse. Dear Hyuuga, the inside had read, this letter lies atop the body of the most intolerable meddler of your age, whose plots within plots spread deep across the world and to places you could not possibly imagine. He has caused me great duress over the years, and so now that he is dead, I have taken from him some small recompense. I should thank you for slaying him, and yet I notice that you have taken one of his eyes with you. I would very much like to have it. 30 leagues southeast of this structure is a cave, through which you will be able to access my home. You are invited to come and meet me, where we might discuss matters further. If you require more motivation, I intend to crash the moon into the planet and kill everyone on it. I do not need your eye to accomplish this. If you cooperate with me, I will spare yourself and a certain amount of your loved ones from the complete annihilation of your species. If you still do not wish to talk, you will at least need to confront me if you wish to mount a futile attempt to stop me. Come alone, or the cave will not permit you to pass. Sincerely, Tonari, last of the Otsutsuki. It was, she had to admit, a really damn good letter from a family politics shit-talking perspective. She was still gonna go kick his ass. Nijisai hung heavy in her pocket as she stepped out into the light, shielding her own eyes and taking a look around. She looked out, trying to see the horizon. Then looked up and up and up, huh? He wasn't fucking kidding. She said, thinking of Itachi's last Jinjutsu as she came to terms with being on the inside of a very, very large globe. I'm on the inside of the moon. Toby felt the tug of Kamui as he appeared in the Akatsuki base and immediately realized he wasn't alone. He turned, slowly, and saw a hooded figure stooped in the shadows of the demonic statue. It would have been hard to tell who the intruder was, but, well, the Byakugan is bullshit. Kabuto, right? He asked. Roki-kun's boy toy? Wow, leading with the shout out to the dead master? The young man stood and pulled down his hood. I see why you weren't in charge of Akatsuki PR. Toby tilted his head, taking in Kabuto's form. Gray-green scales covered his entire body, and his eyes were yellow and slitted. Toby frowned under his mask. You made your dick bigger? I what? Kabuto recoiled a little. Your dick. Toby told him. Last time I looked it was smaller. I combined my DNA with that of half a dozen unique and powerful bloodlines, including Lord Orochimaru's. Kabuto sighed. Yes, my dick got bigger, but that wasn't the point if you're such an Übermensch. Now why do you still need glasses? Toby asked, pointing to the spectacles. You've obviously done something to your eyes, I don't need them. Kabuto bit out, flushing slightly. They're there for the aesthetic. Are you not going to ask me why I'm here? Well, not since it's pissing you off so much. Kabuto glared, and Toby relented. Gasp. Intruder. What are you doing in my bachelor pad? Thank you, is it to seduce me? No. Kabuto shouted, angrily. I'm here with an offer. I'm not interested in your science dick, I'm not offering you my body. Kabuto exhaled and smiled. But I am offering you quite a few others. Toby nodded. Ah, I see. Hookers. For the love of Kabuto threw up one hand and flexed his chakra. Toby almost killed him there, but realized that he wasn't picking a fight. 10 or so coffins rose up from the ground, and at another gesture from the snake man, some of their lids popped off. Sasori, Deidara, Haiden, Kakuzu, Neji and Nagato. Edo Tensei. Toby remarked, letting himself be serious for a moment. Don't you need a little bit of their DNA or chakra to make these? Not to mention a human sacrifice. I've been busy picking up after a lot of messes. Kabuto replied, smugly. And as for the human sacrifices, he slapped the side of the statue. This bad boy can fit so many fucking human souls in it. Oh, nice one. Toby threw out some finger guns. Thank you. You know, your Zetsu is such a fascinating creature. There's the black one, and then millions of these little cell thingies hidden in this here statue. I channeled in some sage chakra, and poof. Free bodies. And they count, too. You could use the Reaper Death Seal with these. Or in my case, sacrifice them to bring back some zombies. I can only get so many right now, but you asked me to ask you why you were here. Toby pointed out, entirely unhappy with how much the young man knew. And now you're just flexing your dead guy collection. Are these the hookers? As much as I want to get in Nagi-kun's pants, I draw the line where it comes to the dead. Very well, allow me to be more straightforward. Kabuto turned back to look at him. You want to pick a fight with the 5 nations. I want in. I'm not sharing the bijou with you. Toby deadpanned. My collection's almost complete. I don't want the bijou. Kabuto's expression soured. I want Hinata Hyuuga. Specifically, I want her head on a spike, while her headless body serves as my maid. I even have the outfit picked out. Damn. I thought I had issues. Toby shivered. Thanks for the offer, but I don't need your help. Really? Kabuto said. Ah, of course. fighting all 5 Kage and their servants isn't much of a challenge for Madara Uchiha. I am pretty dope, Toby admitted. Kabuto smiled again. So, wouldn't you like to have Madara on your side? Again, Toby almost killed him. Instead, he controlled himself, remaining very still and asking, now whatever do you mean? Kabuto snapped his fingers, and another coffin appeared in the room. Toby's fists tightened, his eyes showing him the contents long seconds before it actually opened. Funny, remarked Kabuto, leaning on the coffin. You can't summon the soul of someone who's still living from the Pure Lands. So, he pat the corpse of Madara Uchiha on the head. If I've got him reanimated here, who are you? Seconds ticked by. Of course I don't really care. Kabuto continued, breaking the tension and stretching calmly. Here's the deal, if you help me get my hands on someone with wood release, I can get you an army of thousands of white Zetsu, and hundreds of the strongest ninja in history. I'm talking all the Kage, except the Hokage, they're all in the Reaper's belly and I can't get in there, all the 7 swordsmen of the mist, all the Akatsuki, as you can see. And, he flicked a finger, and Nagato and Madara opened their eyes. Purple concentric circles were revealed. How in the actual fuck? Toby asked. There's only one pair of Rinnegan in existence. Oh, they're artificial, Kabuto admitted. They reanimate with their eyes intact even if they lost them in life, isn't that crazy? But they work. And they're linked to this statue right here. And you and I both know that the human path of the Rinnegan can drag out the soul of a bijou in a matter of seconds and send it to the statue. Or they can do it using the chains, or the rods. He spread his arms. I'll help you trap your runaway pets. In return, I'd like you to help me bring down Team 7. But don't kill Hinata, please, I want that honor myself. I know you can use that Kamui of yours to put her in timeout. Toby stuck out his tongue and blew, making a PTHW noise. You brought Madara back with the Edo Tensei. Do you have any idea how much more complicated that makes things? He shoved his hands in his pockets and stared. You know I could just kill you now. You could. Kabuto shrugged. But why? I'm going to go pick a fight with them anyway. We may as well coordinate. And I imagine once you've got the beasts you'll pretty much be a god and you'll want to hunt me down for knowing all your secrets, but I'm confident in my ability to hide. May as well use me while I'm useful, right? You're unusually chill about knowing I'll probably betray you. Toby pointed out. Yeah. Kabuto nodded. But I also performed unsafe experimental DNA tests on myself, resurrected the most dangerous man in history and planned to pick a fight with literally all of the everyone. So maybe I'm just insane. Beneath his mask, Toby smiled. Welcome to the club. Prep your shit, we attack in 10 days. 10 days later, boy, do I feel good about being free from mind control. Yamato said to himself. I sure hope nothing else that bad happens to me, like being used as a battery to power the attack of an undead army. That was when Kisame brained him over the back of the head with Samahata. There's no way someone didn't notice that. Edo Deidara rolled his eyes. If Kisame wasn't a diagnosed psychopath, he might have found it weird to be doing a mission with the zombie of his ex-teammate. As was, he just chucked Yamato's form over. Get him on the clay bird, get him back to base. He grunted. But you're right. I'll cause a scene, give you a chance to escape. You got it, boss. Deidara began to fly away, and Kisame put his hands together. The occupants of the boxed canyon in the island in the middle of nowhere definitely noticed the geyser of water that exploded outwards from the trees, flattening a good chunk of the woods. Kisame stood in the middle of the devastation and waited, seeing multiple dots from around the area begin to move towards him. That's 50 Ryo! Shouted the blind puppeteer, reaching Kisame first. I bet 50 Ryo they'd find us inside of 2 weeks. Guy, pay up! I'll pay you later. Shouted the taijutsu master, beginning to glow with a green aura as he squared up. Naruto and B are meditating by the waterfall, we must deal with this man as fast as possible. More nameless ninja appeared, from the umbu of various villages, and Kisame grinned, preparing to draw his sword, as everybody hold up. Everybody did, in fact, hold up. Another blindfolded boy, this one not wearing ridiculous face paint, barreled onto the scene, hands splayed outwards. Wait, guys, time out. He pointed at Kisame. Kisame Hashigaki. Then he turned and stage whispered, that is Kisame, right? I can't actually, it is I, Kisame nodded. You are Sasuke Uchiha, correct? Das me. Sasuke continued pointing. Kisame. I challenge you to a duel for ownership of Samahata. There was a brief pause, where all that could be heard were some disgruntled birds chirping. Sasuke. Kankuro explained, patiently. We have him outnumbered, I accept your challenge. Kisame declared, far more interested now than he had been when he'd first been given this mission. What are your terms? A battle to death or surrender? Sasuke declared. Winner claims the sword, or swords, of the loser. Sasuke, you are blind, Kankuro hissed. Kenjutsu only? Kisame asked. No holds barred. Sasuke told him. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Sasuke, what the actual fuck? Kankuro demanded, grabbing his shoulder. You're giving him a chance to take you out of the battle before he has to deal with us. Sasuke turned his head, and the disdain on his face, even without his eyes, was palpable. Guy. He called. What is it I'm doing? Guy threw his head back and laughed. You are challenging yourself to an incredibly difficult battle while self-sabotaged. You intend to complete your collection of swords while only utilizing the abilities you have attained through hard work. I haven't witnessed such a display of the fires of youth in years. Everyone from Konoha is fucking insane. Kankuro threw his arms up and walked away. You'd get on well with a girl named Ten. I'll introduce you to her later. Sasuke called to him, cackling. So. Are we doing this? Kisame reached to his back and pulled loose the gigantic slab of a weapon there. You're damn right we're doing this. Sasuke reached down to his bracer. With a poof, the two sides of Rado appeared in his hands. In spite of everything, he smiled. This is the most Naruto thing I've done in months. Bring it, fish cake. The light had begun to take on twilight hues by the time Hinata dropped silently to the stone floor, looking up, left and right. Undetected, as yet, by the puppets that swirled around the structure, and in fact the entire inside of the moon. It had been a hell of a trek to get here, but as the only landmark in the entire globe, a giant palace that stretched up to touch the fake sun, it had been clear where she should go. And here she was. Her damn Byakugan still wasn't working, though. Whatever was in that sun, it was so bright it was impossible for her to see anything else. That had never happened before, and it had her on edge. She darted into the archway of a small door, at the side of the building proper. At a test, it was unlocked, and she slipped through and in. The carpets were soft and deep, but she quickly had to jump to the roof as another puppet drifted almost silently along the hall. That was the issue, she noticed. This entire place was silent. Empty. Her feet padded along the roof, taking her from corridor to corridor, reaching a staircase and running up the wall to the highest floor she could reach. Or, the lowest. The place was big enough to span the curvature of the moon, and it was playing hell with her sense of direction. She reached the top, looking left and right at the next hallway, and paused. She could hear something. Her ears perked at a high-pitched noise, and she picked the corridor that took her in that direction, running down it and hearing the sound get louder and louder. This hallway seemed to feel more lived in. The carpet had signs of wear. Doors were left ajar, and Hinata took brief looks inside them, surprised at what she saw. One was full of dressers, dozens of dresses and costumes hanging up or draped over chairs. One had an easel in the corner, with every wall covered in hand-drawn paintings. One had a swimming pool. And as Hinata ran, the sound resolved into a voice. A female voice. Jealousy, turning saints into the sea. Hinata smiled. This Otsutsuki lady can't have much ninja training if she isn't keeping an ear open. Unless she's using Neji Snow, his eyes should be just as ineffective as mine, shouldn't it? Swimming through sick lullabies, choking on your alibis, the voice was coming from the door on the end of the hallway. Hinata reached it, took a deep breath, and slipped through. It was a bedroom. A large 4-poster was central, against a large wall that was over 90% window. The view was breathtaking, the vantage point showing a panorama of the curved terrain. The upper part was almost completely dominated by the central light, which, as Hinata had witnessed over the last few days, changed to glow with the blue-white light of a moon. But it's just the price I pay. Destiny is Calling Me sat on the bed was the source of the singing. A young teenage girl, brushing her hair. There was a delicate, elegant blindfold across her face. A face which Hinata looked at for barely a moment before letting out an involuntary gasp. Open up my eager eyes, cos I'm HM? The girl turned towards Hinata. Toneri, is that you? Hinata shook. The face she was looking at, it was older of course, but it couldn't be. This was impossible. Neji's voice echoed in her mind, the universe does not care what you believe to be impossible. So, voice cracking, Hinata spoke. Hanabi? Is that you? Issues with gravity. Sasuke charged, swinging Rado with incredible precision at where Kisame, probably, was. He was proven correct when his blades crashed into Samahada's obnoxious width and length. Kami, dude, he spat, compensating for something much? Wow, nobody has ever made that joke at me before. Kisame deadpanned, disengaging and pulling his blade away to swing downwards. It was really difficult to describe what Sasuke had learned to sense for, without his eyes to aid him. Sound was the obvious one. Kisame was hardly the most subtle of ninja, and the constant chattering of Samahada was incredibly useful when it came to pinpointing its location. But, well, Kisame was still a ninja, and when his right hand thrust out in a grab at Sasuke's face, it was done practically silently. And yet, Sasuke ducked. He dropped his stance low and slashed left and right, forcing Kisame to bring Samahada down and use it as a shield to block the cuts. Sasuke was reacting 90% to pure kinesthesia. Every time he touched Samahada, he could feel where Kisame was exerting force from, and every time we kiss, I swear I could fly. He could feel where the strange shark man was pushing from, what angle his arms were at, how his feet were planted, which in turn let him dodge the kick that was thrown out at him. He felt the wind on his skin, an inevitable side effect of the mass of the attacking weapon and the speed at which it was displacing the air, and was able to sway away from the oversized cleaver's vertical chops. He jumped high above its following low sweep, temporarily releasing his swords to make the hand seals for the great fireball before grabbing them out of the air again and charging them with electricity as he completed the maneuver. Kisame, on his part, brought up the sword and swung it above his head to catch the flames with pitiful ease. The explosive tag that Sasuke had left before beginning the jump did detonate on time and should have forced Kisame into a position where he had to stop 2 attacks from 2 separate directions, but he just ignored it. Oh yeah, the damage on that thing is way too low this late in the game. Unless I get him to swallow one, pre-made explosives aren't gonna help me here. Chidori! Sasuke shouted, stabbing forwards with both Rado, but again, Kisame brought Samahada up in the way, and the attack collided harmlessly into the weapon's surface. It just rustled louder. Not gonna help you, kid. Kisame told him, smirk audible. Samahada here eats chakra for breakfast. Literally, I gotta feed it. You're just doing me a favor. Well, shit. For the first time in a long time, it's not actually hypocritical for me to say this, your powers are bullshit. Noted. Kisame let out a roar and went on the offensive, and oh, boy, was it an offensive. He swung the obnoxious sword of his like it didn't weigh anything at all, and swung it like a motherfucking professional too, 'cause hey, the guy with the strongest sword in the group, specifically renowned for swordsplay, is a good fucking swordsman. Who dey thunk it? Sasuke gave ground, being battered backwards, until inevitably, yep, tree stump, he stumbled under the pressure. A boot to the chest dropped him, and Kisame jumped, swinging Samahada all the way round in a meteor attack that would probably bury Sasuke a good 20 feet until into the ground if it landed. However, Kisame had just made his first mistake of the battle. When you stop using your chakra to anchor yourself to the ground, you become a victim to all of Newton's unpleasantness. Sasuke switched swords and swung. There was a boom as Shibuki collided against Samehada. The blast sword definitely did not use chakra, at least not in a way that could be easily eaten, and while Sasuke was slammed, pretty painfully, mind you, back onto the ground, Kisame was thrown tens of meters backwards through the air. Sasuke thought that maybe the extra space would do him good. How innocent of him. Water style. Kisame shouted. Tsunami. From the roaring, Sasuke got a pretty good impression of just how much water was charging towards him, and holy shit, was it a lot. He jumped back up to his feet and swung Shibuki again, the explosion impacting the liquid's surface and buckling it, leaving him in a temporary dome of air as the water crashed down all around him. He was switching swords again when the wall of water in front of him buckled, and Kisame came roaring through, swinging upwards, with Samehada. Sasuke brought Kubikurabocho down to block, the only sword he had that was big enough to effectively counter his opponents, but had to let himself leave the floor to stop the attack, breaking both his arms. He was punted upwards, breaking through into the water above him, and then, unsure as hell not staying submerged in here with him, he thrust himself further upwards until he broke to the water's surface again. Immediately, he slipped, almost falling entirely, as the force from the water on his feet and his sense of gravity and the sounds from all around him resolved into one inescapable conclusion. Oh, you gotta be shitting me. He was balancing on the wave front. The water was still moving, still spreading outwards from the point of the initial jutsu across the whole damn valley. Kisame popped up to join Sasuke there as the water at the top peaked above them, curling over both their heads. Both combatants paused and started laughing. I am using my ninja powers to surf on a 50-foot wave while sword fighting a missing nin. My life is fucking awesome. Water clone jutsu. Shouted Kisame, and shadow clone jutsu. Copied Sasuke, and four of each ninja crashed into each other on the surface of the wave, slipping and sliding along the moving, fluid, near-vertical surface, and if this wasn't the ultimate test of chakra control, then Sasuke didn't know what was. He threw himself against his personal Kisame, knowing this one was a clone, and that he had an advantage here. Kisame's clones were weaker than he was, while Sasuke's were, ignoring the chakra deficiency, exact copies of him. And still blind. But he was damn well making it work. He was stronger than the clone he was facing, and was able to slowly batter it back across the wave, managing to get a height advantage over it and pummel it with gravity's assistance. Eventually, he was able to knock the fake sword away and pull off a beheading swipe that turned the entire thing to water, which in turn crashed sideways into the wave. That was when Sasuke realized there was a problem. Dimly, he'd kept track of the battles going on around him and noticed a bit of a disconnect. One of his clones had popped, and he hadn't received a rush of memories. What the? Samehada was rustling. Oh, shit. It drains chakra. It can consume the clones. That was 25% of my reserves in one kill. Dispel yourselves. He shouted to his remaining clones, feeling the reassuring rush of the rest of his power back. Seriously, how is Naruto so chill with this? And tried to come to terms with the fact that he was now being charged by 3 Kisame at once. And without my eyes, I can't tell who's real. Does it even matter? Come on, Sasuke, think. What's different about the clones? They're slower? If he's smart, he'll just limit himself to their level. They were all almost on top of him when he had an idea. Praying he was right, he jumped away from the wave, spinning, positioning himself so his head was downwards, no, sideways. Kami, this is confusing, and put his hands to his lips. Great fireball. As he span, the flames span with him, blasting out in all directions. There were 2 dull pops. Sasuke grinned, making more hand seals, as the remaining, real Kisame cut through the flames as though they weren't there. Shadow clones are just avatars. Their clothing isn't real cloth, it's just more clone. Same with their equipment and weapons. Cloned explosive tags can't go off like the original, so cloned Samehada's can't absorb chakra. Lightning release. Sasuke started, and then his outstretched feet crashed into rock so suddenly his legs buckled and his entire technique was thrown. What they on the wave? Kisame barked out a laugh, and of course, Sasuke had hit the cliff. They'd run out of valley for the wave to travel through, and now Sasuke was about to get caught between a rock and a hard bastard. "Batter up!" shouted Kisame. Sasuke got one foot underneath him and sucked in a breath. Then, when Samahata was less than a foot in front of his face, his entire body flashed purple, and he was gone. Neji Hyuuga tilted her head to one side, moonlight framing her face. "Yes? Who are you?" Hinata's head was ringing, the room seemed to be spinning around her. Hanabi? "Hanabi, it's me. It's Hinata, I'm Hinata?" Hanabi's face exploded into one of sheer joy and she jumped up off the bed. "Big sis." She ran over and crashed into Hinata, throwing her arms around her. Hinata was too shocked to respond. I've missed you so much." Hanabi gushed. "Ever since I first came up here I always wanted you to come up and meet me, but Tonari always said it was too dangerous, and brought here?" Hinata grabbed her sister's shoulders, arms tense. Hanabi, who but, of course, she already knew the answer. "Neji did." Hanabi beamed. "One morning I woke up, and me and him and Itachi were all on the road together. Apparently there was something really dangerous going on in the village that meant that I had to leave, but they both promised me that you were safe, and told me I shouldn't worry, and Tonari said that there was a genjutsu on me to stop me panicking because at the time I just thought it was a really cool adventure, and they brought me through that weird cave that gave me the funny dreams, and then we came up here and Neji didn't kill her." "Neji was, and you've been up here?" Hinata asked. "This whole time?" "Aha!" Hanabi nodded. "It's really nice here. I can go wherever I want in the whole palace, and the food is good." She hesitated. "I've tried to escape a few times. Because I missed you so much. But I could never get past the puppets," and Tonari said hold on. Hinata shook her head. "Hanabi, who is Tonari?" "That would be me," said a calm voice from behind her. Hinata spun. The first thing she noticed about the man was his skin. It was beyond pale, whiter than chalk and lacking in the visible creases or blood vessels most humans showed. His hair was just as white, and his eyes were closed. "Oh, Tonari." Hanabi beamed at him. "Why didn't you tell me you were stay away from him, Hanabi?" Hinata called out, moving into a defensive position in front of her. "No, I think you need to stay away from her." Tonari's mouth was set in a scowl. "I invite you to my palace on good faith, and your response is to break into the bedroom of my little sister?" Hinata recoiled like she'd been slapped. She's my sister, you sick fuck. What the hell have you been doing to her? Where are her eyes?" "That is not a question you have any right to ask," he told her. "Where is the eye I requested, Hinata?" Hanabi was looking between them with concern. "Wait, what's wrong? Don't come into my room and fight." Tonari paused. And then he said, "Very well." His eyes snapped open. Hinata's gut lurched and she was yanked forwards through the air, but she'd been practicing in case anyone like Pain tried for her again, and she span around, using the pull to increase her momentum and bring her foot around in an axe kick parallel to the floor. She crashed into his forearms, and they locked eyes, her white irises staring into his single, glowing, aquamarine orb. Then she twisted again, struck twice, and he blocked both, and her Byakugan wasn't up so she couldn't target his Tenketsu, so he caught the attacks without any real problems, disengaging, and then she was falling, continuing to accelerate down the hallway since apparently that was downwards now, and Hanabi was screaming from the doorway, but Tonari flicked a finger and it slammed shut. And then Hinata had bigger things to worry about since the wall at the end of the corridor was getting closer. And closer. Lightning crackled, she split the ions in the air and then brought them back together, and boom. Starlight. Wow, really hollow. That crust was thinner than I expected. Hinata flew forwards, upwards, in a cloud of rock dust, and she was on the outside of the moon, and the earth was up in the celestial sphere above her, green and blue and massive, and oh, it was beautiful. gravity reasserted itself, declaring to her body that the moon's surface was downwards, now, and she spun to face the hole she'd made in the crust and laser she fired off sideways, one of the most basic wind jutsu she knew, to propel herself parallel to the surface, as a meter-thick beam of green light blasted out after her, almost catching her feet and turning all the chunks of stone in its path to orange glowing lava. Don't get hit by that, got it? Hinata landed amongst the dust, squinting at the aperture. With a flash, a being suffused with azure light floated out onto the surface in front of her. Toneri was on fire, apparently. Behold, he declared, the power of the greatest of all dojutsu, the Tensigen. She tilted her head. I thought the Rinnegan was the greatest dojutsu. Joint greatest. Toneri amended. While the Rinnegan was the eye of the Sage of Six Paths, the Tensigen belonged to his brother. Oh. She nodded. So it's not as good. Why can I breathe out here? You know what, I'm not questioning it. Of course it's, as he paused. Ah. You're trying to goad me. How cute. A technique you picked up from your teammates, I imagine? If you give me the eye now, I promise I will spare them. She dropped into a sprinter's pose, eyes narrowed. Thanks. But nobody threatens my team. A brief check, and oh, good. Her Byakugan was finally working sensibly out here. She pulled up the first two gates, and charged. Naruto stepped up to the bars of the Kyuubi's prison. Hey, bud? You in there? Somewhere in the dark recesses, damn, he must be really mad if he won't even come to the edge, something stirred. I let you back in because I assumed you were here with an apology. Came the fox's voice. Or your soul. Am I getting either, or do I kick you out again? Well, depends on whether or not you play your cards right. Naruto leaned on the bars. His proximity caught the fox's attention. He saw its ears prick up from somewhere in the darkness. Hey, these things have always been here, presumably to keep you away from me. What happens if I cross them? Well. The nine tails stood up and padded closer. There'd be nothing to stop me attacking you inside your own head. It'd be showdown in the mindscape, we'd be going at each other like we were actually fighting in the real world. And if I killed you in here, I'd be able to take control of your body, or just escape entirely. Course, this only ever happens when a Jinchuriki's seal breaks down in some way. Yours won't, and it's not like you'd ever be stupid enough to cross the bars willingly. Naruto waited. The nine tails looked at him. No fucking way. You want out? Naruto took a breath, then walked a few steps forwards, passing the barrier. Go ahead. Try for it. The Kyuubi was stood there for almost a full second, before snarling and lunging. Samahata smashed into the cliff face less than a millisecond before the entire wavefront did, shaking the surface hard enough to dislodge a miniature landslide of rocks that came tumbling down into the wet, muddy mess that had been created at the bottom. Sasuke didn't care, having already sprinted up the entire cliff in an instant and propelled himself backwards into the center of the valley. He landed in a burst of electricity, and smirked. The Sharingan allowed him to copy any technique he witnessed with it, and perfectly mimic said technique so long as he had the chakra reserves and the nature affinity to do so. He definitely had lightning release, and his chakra reserves were pretty damn good. So he'd copied the Reikich's lightning release chakra mode. What you're about to witness, he called out to Kisame, who he heard walking closer, is a little something I call ninkinjutsu. I'm not Kisame, said Kisame, in Kenkuro's voice. Kisame's over there. Oh, right, my bad. Wait, are you pointing? Hee hee, yeah. Fuck you. Impressive, said the actual Kisame, and Sasuke thanked Kami this opponent was too honorable to try and play tricks on him, and tasty. How do you think I bested the Jinchuriki, boy? Wearing your chakra in a cloak just makes it easier for me to drain it all. You'd have to hit me first, was what Sasuke said, but what he meant was one hit from that thing will kill me anyway if I don't have my Susanoo up, so it doesn't really matter. So he charged. LCM was fast. Real fast. Sasuke suddenly found that he was pressing his advantage, darting around Kisame and swinging Kubikurabocho like lightning. Electricity suffused the blade, and while Samahata absorbed it from every strike, Sasuke didn't particularly care. Exhausting Kisame's chakra was never going to be how he won. Water release. Shark bombs. Kisame shouted, and shot out giant spheres of something. Sasuke was going to go ahead and guess water and sharks and bombs. Chidori, lighting techniques were so easy in this mode, pincushion. Lightning spears shot out in every direction, striking the balls of water and shocking everything inside them. There were a lot of poofs of desummoning from every direction except one, where the rustling told him the electricity had struck Samahata. Phoenix fired jutsu. Sasuke called out, firing a hail of burning flak, most of which, again, crashed harmlessly against Samahata, while others flew wide. A few shuriken dropped to the floor. Sasuke threw his cleaver above his head and made the hand seals to substitution jutsu. Substituting with an object when you couldn't see it was almost impossible, but Sasuke was one of the only people in the Chunin exams who'd done that kunai projectile question without cheating. Just because he couldn't see it didn't mean he didn't know where it was. He appeared behind Kisame, sweeping up one of the other burning shuriken in his left hand and forming a chidori with his right, thrusting to Kisame's back. The issue with the substitution jutsu, however, was that it was hella predictable once they caught you doing it. What I wouldn't give for an instant, no seals substitution Kisame had spun once he'd seen Sasuke making the hand seals, and was able to catch the chidori on Samahata. Sasuke kept up the pressure, feeling the sword pulling the chakra straight out of his body, but smiled, and tapped his left arm. Ninja tip for the uninitiated. He panted. If you're gonna keep using the same trick, your opponent's gonna find a way around it. The ninja wire on the shuriken very pointedly didn't glint, because Sasuke had learned, and gotten a special paint for them to stop his opponents noticing his schemes right before they came to fruition. Unlike Reikage and Kimimaro before him, Kisame didn't see the oncoming threat. Not until Kubikurabocho, tied to the other end of the wire, flew forwards and buried itself in his back. The shark man made a HRK noise, and Sasuke darted in past his guard, grabbing his sword and tearing it back out with a very nasty noise. I'm calling this the Kimimaro special. He told his opponent, who he could hear falling to one knee. See that, motherfucker? You just witnessed character development. He had not bad. Muttered Kisame, spitting on the floor. Not bad at all. And Sasuke promptly shat himself. Remember, Sasuke. Itachi's words came back to him again. When a seemingly downed opponent starts complimenting you and/or laughing maniacally, it's time to start worrying. The rustling intensified. Just once, I'd like to run someone through, and for that person to actually die. Sasuke sighed. Someone gimme a sit rep. What's happening to him? He's turning into a shark man. Shouted Kankuro. What, more than he already is? And then he barely brought up his sword in time to prevent his stomach being punched in. Toneri held up his right arm and shot out a beam of blue energy at Hinata, and she strafed right, analyzing its constitution with her eyes. It was adamantine. Like Naruto's chains. It would neutralize anything she threw at it. And he was covered in the stuff. Bullshit. She thought, dodging another beam and running even closer. My power-up may block chakra, but it doesn't stop attacks working if they hit me. And I have to kill myself to use it. She darted left and he tracked her, raising his left arm to fire, but there was a crackling of light and then he yanked the limb back in pain. That let her close in, giving her an opening to swing a lion fist for his head. He just moved. This is why true flight and true teleportation are supposed to be almost impossible, without flying Raijin. They're just not fair. Hinata's arms cut through nothing but air as Toneri flew backwards and upwards, charging more blasts of energy. She'd learned something though. Whatever he was doing, he wasn't supposed to be only doing it with one eye. The green flames were barely spreading to his left torso, and from his expression, he was in serious pain. Time to worsen that. Taking a leaf out of Sasuke's book, she reached into her belt and threw up a line of razor wire before he got any further out of range. It wrapped around his arm, his left, unprotected arm, and she stuck herself to the ground with chakra, making him jerk to a halt in midair. Got you. She ran through the seals for a blast of lightning jutsu. Whatever Tonari was doing had no such necessities, and he was able to counter fast, his blast of adamantine energy tearing her techniques out of the air and scything down towards her. It was move or be disintegrated, and Hinata chose the latter, jumping away and relinquishing her hold on the moon's surface. Tonari took full advantage of that, pulling away, and tugging on the razor wire she was attached to him with. Hinata's gut lurched as she was pulled up, well over 100 meters above the planet's surface. She refused to let go of the wire, but he didn't seem too inclined to remove it either, since he certainly could have by now. Instead, he started spinning. Hinata's rotational momentum quickly caught up with his, and she was yanked round into a wide orbit with him at the center. He grinned and aimed his right hand at her. Oh, this is just ridiculous. Hinata thought, cheeks flapping from the GS she was pulling. She made use of what limited movement she had to dodge the blasts as her angular speed increased and the tensile strength of her wire was pushed to its absolute limit. Coming up with a plan quickly, she began throwing shuriken. He batted them all aside, pitifully, throwing them into the distance, and she waited until one went flying at just the right angle there. Her hand clenched around the razor wire and flooded it with as much lightning chakra as she could muster. Tonari held as Kami knows how many volts and amps coursed through the wire and into his arm. It would have killed any human ninja, but his alien body or the effects of the Tensiken left it only incredibly painful. The wire overheated and melted immediately, but Hinata had already substituted away, leaving behind a rapidly falling shuriken. Now she was 45 degrees earlier around the circle, and anyone who's taken maths at a high level could tell you what happened next. All the speed that would have sent her flying away at a tangent instead had her rocketing straight towards the center. And to him. Tonari noticed, as she charged up a Chidori lion fist. But he was facing the wrong way, and in the time it took him to recover from his shocking and turn and bring his arm up, she had more than enough time to extend her own arm and Tonari's eyes narrowed. There was a low boom. Something manifested behind his back, something black yet white that sucked in all light yet glowed, and it spread, forming an umbrella in her way, and her technique crashed into it yet did absolutely nothing, and then another sphere of the stuff arced down from above the shield, and there was nothing she could do entirely on instinct. Her eyes flashed fully white. A shield of Kesho Deketsu blossomed out from her other hand, but the orb just smashed straight through it, and out of sheer desperation, she brought up the Vishnu, opal flooding her entire body, and there was a dull thud. Hinata fell, trailing shards of crystal, and crashed through a rocky spar to land on the moon's surface in a crater. She tried to stagger to her feet, and despite herself, looked down. There was a cavernous hole in her chest. Over 15 centimeters in diameter, it was she could see her own heart. It was the only color in her body she could see. The rest of her insides were completely white, from skin through to her shattered bone and organs. She couldn't feel any pain, but she crumpled to one knee nonetheless, her body collapsing beneath her. Was this how Neji felt, at the end? Tonari floated to the floor in front of her, looking at her with pity. 3 of the black things floated behind him as he walked towards her. Your powers are so strange. He mused. But not beyond my ability to repair. Hanabi would be distraught if you were killed, Hinata. Give me the eye, and I will spare you. The eye arms shaking, Hinata reached into her pocket and pulled out Neji's left Goki eye. Tonari nodded, and there was a tug of telekinesis, yet she tightened her fingers around it, not letting go. You didn't kill her. Hinata said, addressing the eye, not her opponent. It's funny. That was the condition I used this whole time. I tried to believe, at first, that maybe my cousin couldn't have betrayed me, that there was some secret plot, and eventually you'd come out and tell me what really happened, but I couldn't let go of the fact that you killed Hanabi. Surely, nobody good could have ever made that sacrifice. Hinata Tonari warned. She ignored him. I was so terrified. She mused, throat feeling dry, cracked, as her heartbeat slowed beat by beat. Itachi started making excuses for you, and I almost killed him on the spot because I was so afraid. For the same reason I felt I had to join Orochimaru, really I couldn't bring myself to let the hate go. Who would I be without it? She rasped in a breath. But I have to. The violence, it has to stop. Otherwise I'll just destroy myself, and everyone I love in the bargain. So I accept the truth. I let you go. Neji Hyuuga, I forgive you. Before Tonari could move, she touched the eye to her throat. It slid, seamlessly, beneath the surface of her opal, her body accepting it as though it had always belonged as a part of her. Lower down, the white slowly crept across her laboring heart. It beat one last time and was still.
Thank you for your views, likes, subscriptions, and overall support of my ongoing efforts to bring great content to all of you. Check out my Patreon for more mature fanfiction. The link is in the description and like everywhere on my channel.